All right, we all ready?
Yeah, Sam.
Yes, Sam.
Okay, so maybe talk about the broad concepts first about like what we're gonna go through. I'll just talk about like I put the keywords in here, and then later on I'll talk about when we start to code, we'll focus on like 2 or 3 key areas. So don't like it's not overwhelming. But a few knowledge that we need to have today. We need to know about databases and SQL. So this is something that you guys probably already know. But today what we're gonna do is we're gonna go create a Postgre database. So you probably want to have Postgre installed. If you don't have Postgre installed, I guess you can use SQLite as a substitute. I would say it's not very sufficient as a substitute because Postgre just does a lot of things that SQLite doesn't do. Also, there's things like concurrency, there's things like locking, all of this stuff, threading and stuff. I'll talk about them conceptually. I will explain to you what is the conceptual idea of locking a database. What does it mean to lock and then unlock? And what is a raise condition? Probably you heard about these things before. Now, the reason why you did not have to worry about that was when you're learning about data science and stuff, typically you're doing your work, you are the only one interacting with the database, right? You are the programmer, you code your notebook, and your notebook maybe interface with a database, but who actually use your notebook? Only yourself, right? I usually call this the audience of one, meaning most people who do data science, they are their own audience. It's an audience of one. So audience of one means you don't have to worry about who is going to use your code, who's going to query your like you don't worry about that, because in a lot of us who learn data science, like you do your work in your notebook, you run it one cell, you run the cell, put in the code in the cell, run the cell again, then you move into another cell, you create another cell, you write another cell, and then run again. Like this is kind of what happens in a huge part of like data science, to learn about concepts like that. But let's talk about how when you start to go into productionizing your work, and when you productionize, of course, you learn about data engineering, you learn about cloud, you learn about deployment. But when you start to the first step you want to go into transcending above audience of one is you now need to think about what happens if there are more than one person using your code. Okay, so this is how I kind of like think of like a learning curve as well. It's like for most of us, we start off, you write code and you're the only audience for your code. You're the only customer for your code. And no one else is gonna see your code. You can write very ugly code and no one is gonna see it because it still runs, right? And that happens in your R Markdown on your Jupyter notebook. But when you want to productionize, you're now writing code for a lot of other people, potentially thousands of people, potentially put it on GitHub. You're gonna have like so many people looking at your code and run your code and stuff. So now it's not gonna always work. And depending on how you set it up. So I'm gonna talk about that later when we set up the SQL. Then I'm gonna explain a simple concept called ORM. Any one of you heard of ORM? Pernah nggak? Do you know what it means?
Iya, Sam.
Sudah ya. What about the rest? Apart from David,
Atau yang lain?
Yeah, object relational mapping. You know what I'm talking about when I say object relational mapping?
Jadi interaksi sama database-nya lewat object oriented ya, Sam, ya? Nggak query langsung.
Yeah, so instead of actually asking you to write so if you go and do your work in the database, you do something like create DB, right? Create database. These are all SQL commands. You say create DB, create table. You do all these SQL. Then you have your data scientists or data analysts or your software engineers in here using Power and Python. So ORM basically just a translator. It says that, hey, can we find a way, right, where the R programmer doesn't have to write, like create a DB, and then after create DB, you need to create a user. After create user, you need to assign user privilege to modify the table, and then you need to modify the table, add author. This, I don't know if you've seen all of this thing before, depending on how familiar you are with creating tables and database and stuff. All of these are a lot of SQL command to learn and to write. And also it's not always very systemized, not very uniform. So if your company is using SQL, using Postgre, this command looks like that. But if this guy is using Oracle or MariaDB or SQLite, then this command suddenly changes as well, because they are not exactly the same. Okay, so all of these are relational database, but they are not exactly the same. Even MariaDB, people like to say that, oh, I'm using MySQL, but actually very few people are not using MySQL. So MySQL, the reason it is not is because it's not open source. So a lot of them who think they're using MySQL is actually using a flavor of MariaDB, for example. Okay, so very few people actually use MySQL, even though it looks like MySQL. It's because MySQL itself, it's a licensed system. you know, like when you don't want to pay for something, but you want to use the MySQL system, you usually use an open source version, something like MariaDB or PSQL or MySQL or something else. But all of these have kind of a different they're not always uniform. So a lot of the command looks the same, but they're not always the same. So then using an ORM basically translates to all of these different systems. So an ORM allows you to just focus on your Python and your R code. You can focus on R and Python code. Using ORM, it would translate to all of this, right? It would translate to the right one. And so you will always write very consistent R and Python code. And that's the second benefit. The third largest benefit is that when you write your code in R and Python, you can also version control it. So it's a lot harder to version control a database later on to sort of like, okay, my database is doing something wrong. Let me go back to the earlier version. It's a lot harder to do that. But if your code is all in R and Python, it's a lot easier to manage everything under version control, along with plus migration later. You can do your migration later. So these are the concepts that we'll look at later. I would run some migration for you, and I will teach you how to write. But I'll do that in Python. I'll not do that in R. But these are the main concepts that we're going to talk about. Apart from that, let's clear all the drawings first. Actually, before I do that, and up to this point, is this idea clear? Is this relationship clear between R, Python, ORM, database? Is there any confusion about this part, or is there any kind of question you want to ask me before we go further? Because if there's no question, I'm gonna clear this screen and I'm gonna talk about. I want to give you the main concept first before we start to write code. Because when I start to write code, I'll be using a lot of like this migration, and you're like, Sam, you didn't explain what the migration is, right? So, before I clear the screen, is there this part here on the? Is that idea clear?
Yeah, so far clear, Sam.
Clear,
Okay.
Sam.
What about the rest? Yeah. No question. Yeah. Okay. All right. You should just ask me, okay, if you have questions. Don't let David and Hussein, because they're more advanced. They
No.
And when they're clear, everyone is like, okay, let's okay. So let's talk about that, the first thing, and then next, once the database side. So always when you start with a software, every time you want to architect something like an API service or a simple, a machine learning application. Okay, so a machine learning application. No matter what you want to start from, you always have to think about a few components, right? Usually in the web application, if you want to set this up as a web application, let's say you want to allow people to upload a picture and then predict from the image, and then from there you want to return a result. Now, how do these things communicate? Okay, so how do these things communicate? This is where I want to introduce something called the REST API. But let's talk about this in the form of a few examples. So let's talk about this app. How do you want the app to look like? Now, there are a few ways you can think about it. One is that you can think about this as a web application. The other one is think about it as a mobile application. Okay, so regardless of how this looks like, let's start from one first. Let's say web application. If we look at the web application front, we usually talk about things in the we talk about this called the MVC framework. Not always MVC, but kind of the paradigm is MVC. M refers to the model. V refers to the view, which is your UI. C refers to the controller, which is usually your logic. Okay. Now, depending on what framework you use, sometimes it's not exactly MVC. Sometimes there are things like MVT, then sometimes there's the MTC and stuff like that. Like for Django, for example, we don't actually have the MVC, but we use the model view template. So later on when we start to code, this becomes clearer, and I'll explain that. But for now, what I want you to know about this is model usually refers to the DB. So you want to have a proper DB architecture, a DB architecture that can scale, right? View usually refers to what? Usually refers to your JavaScript and your HTML. Now, the reason why it's usually referred to just HTML is because in the context of a web app, this is a web browser doesn't understand anything. The web browser, okay, your Chrome browser, for example, this is called a client. A client could be a web app, could be a web browser, could be a mobile browser, it could be your Opera, it could be your Safari, it could be anything, okay? But your browser itself natively understands JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. That's it. So your browser do not understand Python, your browser do not understand R. So every time you want your Shiny to do something, right? You want the Shiny to do something, the Shiny have to be a server behind it. And then everything else that is interactive, anything else that is like, oh, click on this button and then do this drop down, everything else your Shiny actually takes that and transpile them into JavaScript and HTML and then output that here. In fact, you can actually write your whole Shiny app in HTML and then only have your separate R app to inject stuff like that. So there's two ways to write a Shiny app. One is to use app.r and basically put all the stuff in there. The other one is to just create your HTML file and then you write your R file and inject that. Shiny supports both types of workflow. Usually in our school, we teach this kind of workflow where everything is done in app.r because we don't want to teach people to do it .html, but it supports it officially supports two types of workflow, right? So your browser itself only understands everything that is in JavaScript, HTML, or CSS, right? So this is what your wheel is concerned about. How do you present your ideas? How do you present your app? How do you present functionalities to the end user? That's the view. And then we have controller. Controller handles the logic. So let me use a different color here. It handles the logic. So logic is basically things like, for example, what does a machine learning app needs to do? Or it needs to predict something. It needs to return a regression line. It needs to do all this stuff, clean the data stuff. So all of these are your app logic. This is your controller. And then model itself is how do you store data, keep data, version control your data and stuff. This is how to implement data. How many tables do you need? How many tables? Do they need to have any kind of relational between them? That's the DB, right? So this is kind of the MVC. Now, why that is important? Why do we explain about the concept? Is because when you learn how to develop API, and today everything is developed in API. So back then, when you develop a web app, somebody would use a big MVC framework, and the whole thing is under this framework. Okay, so the M, the V, and the C are all under this framework. Today we don't do that anymore. Today the trend is to use something like Docker plus we call it microservices sometimes. Sometimes you hear about that term. Microservices. Sometimes you hear about API. Service. Today we use this method. This is called decoupling. Decouple. So this is the more modern, this is the more acceptable way to write an app today. If you want to work in a software engineering team and stuff like that, you won't see people working on this kind of monolithic. This is monolithic where everything is just one massive framework. Okay, one massive framework that takes care of all of those things. Today we try to decouple. Now, how do we exactly decouple? So how do we decouple is this. We set up the server. Okay, this is our API server. And then we are agnostic to the client. So this can be client 1. This can be client 2. We are agnostic to it. Okay, what does agnostic mean? It means we don't care if the front end is a React app, it doesn't matter. We don't care if the front end is a Shiny app, it doesn't matter. We don't care even if the front end is a Swift iOS app or Kotlin. It doesn't matter. Later, if I can, I'll show you how to do it in React, but I don't know if I have enough time. I don't want to force too much concept into one thing. But today we talk about simple stuff. We talk about what about HTML, okay? And but what I mean by that is that you want to get to a stage where your application is very decoupled. So it gives people all kind of flexibility. So what we need to do as data engineers, data scientists, whatever you want to call it, right? This is what you want to focus on. Is to build the whole thing and it's decoupled from them. So instead of putting everything into one monolithic, so this allows the front end team to work very independent of your architecture. Why? Because as long as they can post an API, as long as they can make a request, then they will get a response. Okay, one thing about the internet, about how the internet works, is that a server, rule number 1 of being a server, imagine you're a server today. Rule number 1 of being a server is that you cannot initiate a response without a request. That's rule number 1. So you can only put a response every time you get a request. So you can only respond when you get a request. That's rule number 1, okay? So a server doesn't proactively give you response. A server only responds when there's a request. So this is the request response cycle, and it works the same as with everything here. I don't know, some of you may have heard of Plumber. Maybe some of you have heard of Plumber. Pernah gak yang pernah pakai Plumber gak?
Yeah.
Pernah, Sam.
Yeah. So same thing here. It's you would always make a request, or some of you may use the Postman. Any one of you have used Postman? Pernah nggak? Aplikasi yang kayak
untuk send request ya?
Yeah. Anyone use Postman in the past?
Pernah.
Ya, Sam.
Pernah, yeah.
Pernah.
All right, so this is cool, right? You guys already know about a lot about how to interact with this. So now what we want to do is we just have to create this server, and then later on you can get your Shiny to talk to it, to interface with it, because we're gonna just do everything in localhost. Okay, so that's kind of the workflow. Now enough of the concept. I think we are good to go. We can get started. So let's so to start off, to illustrate the whole ideas, right? I'm gonna go ahead and maybe give you a quick. Actually, let's start the repo first, because if anything, if I'm gonna paste the repo in here, and all the code we create together, we're just gonna commit in here, and then you can use that as a reference. All right. So let me just go ahead and create a directory. Where am I right now? So let me go ahead and do a bigger, and then I'm gonna make a directory called API. And then I'm gonna change directory there as well. Hey, is my fonts too small? Can you guys see? If it's too small, probably.
Oh, cukup, Sam.
Cukup, Sam.
Let me zoom in a bit, yeah, like that. Okay, so let me make a directory real quick. Change directory in there, and then let me git init, and then let me go ahead and git add. Nothing to add yet, so let me go ahead and just go and do a remote at origin. Okay, so should be all good. Yep. We do need to change the branch because it's master right now. We need to change it to main. To make a push. Well, okay, let's go ahead and just add something then. Let's go ahead and say touch readme.md, and we're gonna add that. Then we're gonna commit that. Commit, and then we're gonna go ahead and say git branch, and hopefully this time it works. Okay, now it works. All right, cool. Let's go and make sure everything does what it needs to do first. Okay, so you can only rename it after you have a file. Okay, that's something I learned today. All right, so now that we have those things, next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up my Visual Studio Code, so you can also sort of open up your Visual Studio Code now. And unless you guys have a good idea about what we want to build today, because we can build your idea, which is so cool, right? But if you don't have an idea, I'm going to use Iqbal's idea here about he has a ticketing. Does anyone want to volunteer any idea? Like, what do you want to build? No? Are we all going to use Iqbal's idea?
Yeah, we can go with Iqbal idea, Sam.
Okay. Okay, so usually when I first start to create an API, right, I usually ask my team to first start off by thinking about this ERD. This is called an entity relational diagram, all right, the ER diagram. You need to think about ER diagram because if you want to create an API service, but you don't know what your tables look like, it's already a very bad start. So typically an ER diagram is gonna look something like. But an ER diagram is going to look like that. So usually that's kind of the first homework, is that you need to first design your ER diagram. You cannot just say, oh, I want to create an API service, but I don't even know what the tables looks like. So my first step is usually I typically start off from, these are all not mine. I mean, these are the homework that they submitted. So I usually say, okay, that's the first homework, is that you have to set up think about that. And it doesn't matter how poorly they do it. For example, sometimes you have, I told them you can, for example, this is acceptable. This is still an acceptable ER diagram. Even though this is not done with a computer and stuff, it's just pen and pencil, it's still fine. Because what matters here is that you need to know how to think about software architecture in the first place. You need to think about how to you need to know what you're trying to create first. If you have an idea but you cannot express that in an ER diagram, you probably don't want to move forward. You don't want to like, oh, let me go create an API, let me go create a Docker, write the front end code and stuff like that, but you don't even have this stuff yet. So that's kind of the first step. Like conceptually, that's the first step. You need to first know, and it doesn't matter how you do it. If you want to use a pen and paper, you want to use this is acceptable, and usually you want to get that, and you want to get a quick feedback on this one. So talk to somebody, maybe talk to David, talk to Hussein, talk to I don't know, talk to Iqbal, talk to somebody who can give you feedback, somebody who can look at this and like, okay, well, I feel like you're missing a table here, or is it that you're missing something here? So for example, like this is like a month ago, but when you first come out with your ER diagram, ask for feedback. My feedback will be, okay, maybe there needs to be a status, because you're trying to create a project management app. The project management app, shouldn't there be a status on whether it's done? It can be a separate table called status, or it can be under the details table. Details table is right under this table, details table. So under details table, there's a few items in here. And then as for the to-do table, this and that, then you get basically once they have some once there is some feedback, you incorporate your feedback. You have you have some idea about this is solid or not. When it's solid, then you move on, right? This is another one. You know, this is how it looks like, and then so basically get some feedback. Once you have the feedback, you incorporate the feedback. And again, I think the best way to do it is to do it as like a team. So if somebody put it out, you know, whether maybe somebody created that, and then ask for Iqbal for first set of like feedback. What do you think about it? Am I missing something? Am I creating? Is this redundant? Do I really need this? What can this information be incorporated into this? Oh wait, what about this? Is this very inefficient? So when you think about your ER diagram, there's a few things you want to think about. The first thing you want to think about is that how normalized do you want your table to be? Okay, so the second one is as well is cost consideration. Like if you create a lot of tables, every time you create a new record, it needs to update a lot of tables. This is a lot of cost, right? So think about how that would affect performance, how that would affect cost, and so on and so forth. Oh yeah, this is good. Yeah, thank you for sending it, Iqbal. So I would say that if you have the time before you want to like proceed and build your own API service and stuff like that, spend some time practicing this. Not really, you want to get quite good at visualizing ideas and expressing them in ER diagram. Except that a lot of like data science courses and stuff, they don't teach you that, because they assume all of this is done already. Database, there is an API, you just need to learn pandas, you need to learn NumPy. They assume that, oh, you don't need to learn all of this because it's already done for you. There's already, you work in a company obviously have database architect, so they obviously done that for you. So the thing is that because of that, a lot of courses don't teach this. So I end up mentoring a lot of people who are actually like struggle really hard to come up with ideas, taking the ideas and conceptualizing them in ER diagrams. They don't know what to do. They're like, oh, I kind of know what it looks like, but I've never experienced doing that. And they have done a few Plotly dashboard. They've done a few Shiny dashboard, but they have no idea how to do this. So I would say that if you wanna go beyond of one state, you wanna actually be confident at your project, coming up with good solid foundations for your projects and stuff. I would say this is a very I say it's a very investable skill. Try to find time to think about that. You know, look at the app that you like. For example, look at I don't know, Instagram or something, and imagine how does the ER diagram looks for Instagram, right? Obviously there needs to be a table called likes. Obviously there needs to be a table called follow, because it needs to track who is following who. I think we can just do a quick search on that. Instagram ERD database. You would see something like that, and you would be like, okay, this is an ER diagram and stuff. So I would say go practice a few rounds. You know, this is the user, this is the comment, this is the post. But obviously, posts can also have text. Then what does the text looks like? This is how it looks like. And you also realize that there are relationship between them. So for example, each of the posts, each of the tag itself, here, each of the text itself, it references a post, but where is the post referencing? It references the post, it's table itself. But posts have they're posted by a user. Now, what does that reference? It references this table, and you see all this relationship map here. And there is also, before you do all this stuff, I think one way you can improve it as well is to think about whether it's one-to-many. So you see like the dot and the one. You can improve that and think about relationship like one-to-many. So when you have a table, when they have relational, with another table, this relationship, it could be one-to-one, it could be many-to-one, it could be one-to-many, it could be many-to-many. Okay, think about those examples. Like I can give you a really quick example here, right? For example, like many-to-many is like what? Many-to-many, what are some examples of many-to-many? In the Instagram examples, that is basically post and post table and text table. Why? Because hashtag data science can be ref by, you know, let's say 20 different posts, and one post can ref 20 different tags. So it's a many-to-many relationship. Okay, let's practice and see this before we start to write code. Can you give me another example of a many-to-many? Can somebody give me maybe anyone except Iqbal, because he probably knows this already, but anyone else apart from Iqbal, anyone can give me one example? Any example. It doesn't have to be Instagram, but any example.
Pokemon and trainer, Sam.
Yeah, Pokemon and trainer, because one trainer can have many Pokemon, but it's not many to, because one Pokemon can, okay. One Pokemon type, yeah. One Pokemon.
Okay, one Pokemon.
Yeah, if it's a unique Pokemon, then it's probably a one-to-many. So one Ash to many Pokemon, but the Ash Pikachu can only belong to Ash. So that would be,
but every trainer can have Pikachu, right?
Yeah. So it depends on like whether it depends on whether the ownership it's a one-to-many or many. So like if you talk about Pikachu as a general Pikachu, then anyone can have a Pikachu. But if you're talking about each Pokemon in the game, that you implement that in the game, then each one can only belongs to one user. So once this Pokemon was caught, it cannot be caught by anything else. So those are that, right? But yeah, teacher to student. What do you guys think? Teacher to student. What is the relationship? Is that a one-to-many? Is that a many-to-many? Is that a many-to-one? What kind of relationship is this?
Many-to-many.
Okay, now this time apart from Iqbal and apart from David.
Okay.
Many-to-many, Sam.
Okay, all right. So you need to know about this stuff. This is all important because if you cannot think about this here, you shouldn't be learning API. Like you shouldn't be learning like create API and do all this stuff yet. You should try and get this foundation clear first. Like if this is very new to you and this is very confusing to you, if right now I'm confusing you a lot, you should pause here and not like don't go into like, oh, let me create an API and stuff. This is the clear foundation. This is everything on the API is basically trying to translate what is happening on the database and to allow the client to query that. So if you cannot implement a database correctly and soundly, then it's already a pretty bad start. So this is a very important skill. I said if you have time, right? And you want to broaden your skill set as a data scientist, I feel like ELD is probably one of the top 3 things you need to add on if you don't know how to do that. It always feels easy until you start to do it from scratch. So think about an idea that you have, right? And try to implement ELD. And if you need feedback, post it on Slack into the data science channel or post it to me. I'll give you feedback. I'll give you some tips about how to implement that, how to optimize it. But take that as a first homework if you can, right? So if you have time over the weekend, over Monday, if you have less training lessons and stuff, then try and do those homeworks as well. Because that's how you learn. Okay, enough of talking. Let's go ahead and actually start working. So I'm going to set up my virtual environment. So this is the second thing you need to learn about. So I'm going to put that in here. So learn about virtual environment, how to create virtual environment so that you don't install a bunch of things and then a bunch of things with a bunch of other things. Okay. So very simplistically, what is a virtual environment is that this is your computer. So your virtual environment basically allows you to install Pandas 0.24 here, but I'm working on another project that uses Pandas 1.1. Okay, so this allows me to basically abstract away and encapsulate all of my dependencies relating to this package and not affect this project. Because if I don't use virtual environment, that means, let's say I don't use virtual environment. This is my computer and I install everything on my base. This is very horrible practice. Usually I really don't recommend that. If you buy a new computer and you install everything, so every time I ask you to install something, you do pip install. That is very bad practice because you're going to install everything and there is no encapsulation. So now you have Pandas 0.24, but at some point, you're teaching a class and you need to upgrade to Pandas 1.1. So you did that. But once you did that, all the projects start to break because they reference something that doesn't exist yet, okay, or something that was deprecated. So now, this creates a lot of confusion. It's very, very hard to manage because you can only have one version of Pandas under one base. Okay, so how do you know you did the right thing already? Now, how you know you did the right thing is that you check for your pip list. And let me see if I have Pandas in here. I don't have Pandas in here, right? Okay, let me go and deactivate this. Let me go and start from scratch. Let me go ahead and create a new one. So I can say make, and I'm gonna say today is what? Today is the 31st of July. I'm gonna call it August. Okay, so I'm gonna delete this virtual environment anyway. So when I say make virtual environment August, I just created a new virtual environment. Then I'm gonna clear the screen. Now, if I were to deactivate that, let me show you this. If I do a pip list, it shows me all the Python packages on my machine right now. How do I know it's on my machine? Because I'm not in any environment. So I don't have that in front. I'm not in any environment. When I say pip list, okay, what do I have? Pandas 1.2.4, and that's it, right? That's it, nothing else. Now, if I go into my virtual environment, August, if I do a pip list again, what do I see? Nothing. I only see 3. And now it frees me up to install anything I want. For example, I can go ahead now and say pip install numpy, and it will be fine because it would install the numpy directly into August. Now, I don't want to do that because it probably be quite huge, but I can install my own package, pip install Erlang, and it would do that, install that into the package, and then I would have a different version of Erlang in each of the environment, and that would be fine. Okay, so the main idea is that you wanna start off by learning that. I know I'm going a little bit too fast here, but I would drop all of this stuff in the comments, and if you have time, you can try and learn that on your own individually. But because the main focus is really on API, so these are not even the main focus. That's why I'm going a little bit fast. But if you don't understand anything, you can ask me again and stuff, and we can maybe talk about the ideas a bit more. So anyway, the main idea: create a new environment that you can call it anything you want. I'm gonna call it August because I'm gonna delete that, just a temporary name right now. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to try and create a REST API framework. So actually, I'm going to try and can terminate this because I don't need that right now. Pip list clear. Okay, so I still don't have anything installed that yet. So the first thing I'm going to install is to install Django maybe. So let's go ahead and do pip install Django, collecting Django. And then after Django, I'm going to install Django Rest Framework. So you can look for the commands by doing pip install Django Rest Framework. You can do it like that, and it will give you like what do you need to copy. And here it says pip install Django Rest Framework. Just copy the whole thing in there. Done. Now if I do a pip list, what do I have? I have Django, bam, right? And this is very clean. Why is this clean? Because I can then, let me just go ahead and do install Rest Framework first. So let me install Django and Django Rest Framework. Okay, done. So if I look at my pip list, now I have all of these libraries in here. So what I can do now is I can say pip freeze and put that into requirements.txt. So this is basically saying that take the output of this and feed them into requirements.txt. All right. So now I have requirements.txt, and now I'm ready to commit. So I can say dependencies, and then I can git push. And when I do this, now, sorry, did I lose you guys for a second because my internet disconnected?
Yeah, Sam.
Okay, yeah. So pip install -r requirements.txt basically says, go ahead and look at the requirements.txt. When you git pull, you pull along with the rest of the code. You also put a requirement. So you say pip install -r requirements.txt is basically going to say, go through the requirements.txt and take each line of the requirements and then install a version of that. So so then you have exactly the same environment as mine. Okay, so I assume that that's all done. So now I have the requirements.txt, and I can get started with my REST API. So what is Django Rest Framework? Django Rest Framework basically allows you to create REST API and stuff.
Sam, you need to share your screen, Sam.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Forgot about that. Oh yeah, okay, we're back. Are we back here? Yeah, we are.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So what are the alternative to REST Framework? If you don't want to learn REST Framework, are there any alternative? Yes.
Chan, gantiin Chan.
Oke. Ya,
Bentar, gue nih ketinggalan. Tadi tuh library apa aja yang diinstal ya?
Django sama
Framework.
Django
Nanya
Rest.
deh, ini kita ngikutin bikin virtual environment kan? Terus
Iya.
install Django,
Ikutin
apa itu
aja.
nyontohin ide doang?
Harusnya ngikutin sih lah.
Bukan yang dipakai kelas katanya.
Django.
Jadinya, oh ya udah ikutin deh.
Okay, alternative, right? Alternative. So the one that I think some of you have already started doing is Flask. I like Flask. I use Flask as well. Pedagogy is built on Flask. So Flask basically allows you to create views and routes and stuff. So basically it's a micro framework. Okay. So let me see if I oh yeah. let me put all of this in here, since so do a pip install Django and then pip install Django Rest Framework. Okay. Or you can just do a git pull and then do a git pip install requirements.txt. That would install exactly the same thing because requirements.txt is really created for you. But anyway, the first one is Flask, and then there is also Fast API. Any one of you have played around with Fast API yet, or not yet? No one? And then there's the DRF, Django Rest Framework. Okay. Now, I would say from in terms of this is less opinionated. This is more opinionated. I would say that as a beginner, I would strongly encourage you to go and use Django Rest Framework. Why? Because the more opinionated a framework is, the less decisions you need to make. It makes a lot of decisions for you. It helps you do a lot of things. Another very concrete example is, for example, when you build out a nice API service. Let's say your API service, you allow anyone to ping the API and you return a number of COVID based on region. You return a result of this in JSON. Okay, you return of this, you return all the results in here. But this API become very popular. People were trying to ping your API. Everyone to create a Shiny app pings your API to try and ping number of COVID cases in based on region, breakdown by region. And your API becomes so popular that now you have to find a way to host it, and Heroku free tier is no longer a viable option. So what you do, you put it into Microsoft Azure or you put it on AWS. And now it's starting to cost you money because your API is becoming very popular. So it costs you about $500 every month. Okay. And then what happened is that you also realize that because your API is getting so popular, you get people who ping your server, ping your API server every second, making 10 requests or 100 requests every second. Okay, these are things that can happen. These are very real things. This is something that actually happened to Tiara before, and it cost the company like $3,000. You can ask Tiara what. Actually, I don't know if you guys still remember that incident. I think David and Hussein probably know about this incident. You remember that incident?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So what happened is that when your API gets so popular and so public, and people are trying to ping your API, and then 100 over requests over a second, and then people are using your API to do all kind of DDoS attack and stuff. So what happened here? Now, two solutions. One is to implement some sort of authentication mechanism. So you authenticate your API first. You said, okay, hold on a second. You need to have an algorithm.ma email to use my API. So if the guy, algorithm.ma, if you don't have this email, you cannot register for the API service and you cannot use it. And then the second one is you can say, take this. Did you put the what do you put? Did you put pip install -r? -r means -r tells it that this is a file that you need to recursively run it. So it can't just be requirements, but it needs to put a -r.
Okay. Yeah.
R actually stands for no problem. R actually stands for recursive. So when it sees a recursive, what it means is that the remaining here is not a package. So the reason you get an error is because I don't want to fix the error for you and not explain to you why is that. When you say pip install, right? Pip actually go and look at the next thing here, and it assume when you say pip install this, it assume this is a package name. When you put requirements.txt, it says, hey, I cannot find a package called requirements.txt. Okay, so when you say pip install and then you put this, it says, I cannot find this because this is not a valid package name. I cannot find a package we call this. So you need to tell it that, this is not a package name, by the way, this is a file. So you put a .r, it said, recursively go in there and install that. Yeah, so that's kind of the thing. Yeah, no problem. So let's go back to this one. So there are two solutions to your API to trying to prevent people from doing bad things with your API or trying to ping your API a lot. So one is authentication. I'm going to show you authentication today, and I'm also going to show you, I probably don't have time to show you how to do rate limiting. So the other solution is to do rate limiting. Rate limiting basically says that, okay, you can ping and ask me the number of COVID based on region, and I'll give you a response, but you can only do 50 requests per minute, which is reasonable and fair. Okay, if within a minute you can make 50 requests, you cannot make more than that, because making more than that means that you're gonna ping my server a lot, and I'm gonna have to pay for a lot of those things, and I cannot provide the same service for everyone else. So there are a few solutions to that. Okay, I talk about authentication, I talk about throttling, and I talk about rate limiting. Now, if you use Flask, right, you need to go and implement your own. You need to think about how to implement this, how to implement this, and how to implement this. Why? Because it's less opinionated, meaning it doesn't make an opinion on how you should implement it. It lets you make your own decision. But Django Rest Framework, on the other end, is very opinionated. So because it's very opinionated, it says, well, you don't have to worry about all this stuff, because I'm gonna help you implement all this stuff. All right. So I'm gonna give you all of these facilities just for you, just out of the box, completely out of the box, kind of like Shiny. So that's what Django Rest Framework is. Right now, let's take a look at what its documentation does and what does it say about itself. Let's look at Django Rest Framework rate limiting. You see, it gave you all of this information. It say, how can I limit request? So it gave you all of this. It gave you all of these facilities here. All of these facilities. You can set up something. This is as simple as it is. One line of code. It does it for you. Now, you try to use Flask. Can you achieve the same effect? Yes, but you need to write a lot of code. This is not a one line of code anymore. You know what I'm saying? So it gives you a lot of the out of the box. It gives you a lot of facilities. So this is really, really good. So I would say as a beginner, maybe at some point when you become more advanced, you can implement your own. You can say, well, it's not a big deal. I can try and take a look at the IP. I can say request, look at the IP, take a request, and then find that, and then write my own logic. But right now, you don't have to do that. Right now, all of this is provided to you for free, out of the box. So I'm going to give you a few resources like here, and I'm going to teach you how to set up your own, okay? But for now, I assume all of you have Django installed already, ready to go? If not, just say no, then it's fine. Then we just gonna like ready to go, yeah? All right, let's go ahead then. So first of all, I would say maybe the best, like long after this workshop, not the workshop, but internal workshop, you can actually go ahead and try and follow along the documentation. Or you can follow along the official tutorial even. Like there is a getting started, you know. So you can actually go ahead and actually try to follow along this part. You can say like writing your first Django app. It will tell you a lot of these things. It will tell you, okay, first check for version and stuff. So I'm gonna try to, as much as I can, mirror this one, but incorporate the project idea from here, pick it. But the reason I do this is that later on, long after this, you can continue to learn on your own by following exactly this one. So I'm gonna paste you the official docs here. This is the official documentation, not some third-party sites. So pretty good, pretty solid. Okay. So it says that you first need to start with a dictionary, start from a directory, and then go in there and then try to create your project. So you do that by doing Django admin start project, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go ahead and say make directory, and I'm gonna call it August as well, because it's just a temporary one, right? I'm gonna change to August, and then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna say Django -admin. Now Django admin, basically all of these commands is under the manage. All of these commands can be found under the manage.py. So if you open up, it's not created yet, but let's go ahead and do Django admin, and let's say start project. And within start project, you give it a name. So what do you want to call it, right? I can call it August as well. So give it a second, and it would complete this work. Once it's done, I want you to check on the bottom, on the top left of your. Not all of you use Visual Studio Code. So if you don't, maybe use something else. But check that it already created the directory for you. And you check that because you see that this has been created because you find manage.py and all of these files that was scaffolded out for you, right? So go ahead and do Django admin start project. Give it a name. Give it any name. I just call it August because tomorrow is not tomorrow, but 2 days from now it's August. Because I don't know any other good names for this service. But you know, it's up to you what you want to name it. Okay, Aman. Yeah. Okay. So one thing here is that when you realize that you're in August, you see that there is if you list your directory, you see that you have a directory in August here, right? So you can go into that directory, and if you list it now, you see manage.py. So what you can do is you can say Python manage.py and run server. Run server is asking Django to start a server, but you and this run server command, where do you find that? Where do you edit this command? It's in manage.py. So if I open up manage.py right now, this is kind of how it looks like. It gives you all of these servers, right? So, and it also imports a lot of other things. It says, first of all, if you find the core management, and so core management is where it implements a lot of this logic for you. I need to go and change my directory into August, I think. Yeah, this one. Okay. So go ahead and do Python manage.py run server. You don't need to open up manage.py. You just need to do this. And then now it says, okay, starting development server. So it gives you this directory. I want you to just copy that and just open that up. Bam. You already managed to get Django running. Very, very simple, right? It's not difficult at all. It's just basically like 2 or 3 commands of code. First thing is to learn how to do the start project. And then next thing is to do Python manage.py. Basically, because that's where you, if you do a manage.py and it says cannot execute a command, it's because you are not in the right directory. So do a ls, make sure that manage.py is right in there. Maybe you need to do a cd to move into 1 level down in order to run that. So I want you to get to this screen where everything is starting to work, where you see like the install works successfully. If you get to this screen, then can you just give me a simple confirmation saying yes or something, so I know you got there, and then we can wait for the rest. Okay, let's wait for the rest. If you manage to get it, you can put a yes, yeah. If you did not manage to do it, no worries. Do it slowly, but as long as you understand the ideas, and you can later on you can practice a lot more. But right now, just try to get to a point where you can run a server, and it will tell you that okay, my server is running. Here is where the server is running at, right? Localhost 8000, port 8000. Host is localhost, port is 8000. What about the rest? Fulfill inner.
Sam, I failed to run the manage.py.
Okay, you failed to run manage.py because manage.py doesn't exist in the directory. If you type ls, what do you see? If you type ls, do you see manage.py?
Wait. Manage.py. Wait, ls. It's not recognized.
ls is not recognized. I think you need to type dir if you're in the computer, Windows.
Or dir.
Yeah.
And the folder is in August. And when I check the folder, there is a manage.py file.
Okay, so that means that you haven't really run the start project yet. Have you started the project yet? Have you done this one?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So once you start the project, and if it's a NAMA, you need to move into that NAMA before you run the manage.py. So I think manage.py doesn't exist on this level. So this is my folder. If I do a start project.
Oh, okay.
NAMA,
Okay.
It actually create a subdirectory called NAMA, and it put the manage.py in here. Yeah.
Oh,
so okay. Another thing you can do is you can just do a python.manage.py. You can do, instead of manage.py, you can go ahead and put nama / like that. You can do it like that as well. So it basically says execute the code under the nama subdirectory. That's also okay. But this is not very conventional. Yeah, the more conventional is to just cd into it and then start from there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sip. Okay, Sam. I'll try.
Okay. No problem. Okay, everyone. Are we? Is there? Okay, that's good. Is there anyone that I'm supposed to be waiting? Let me know, okay? I don't want to like leave you out already so early on because there is still a number of projects we need to. Oh yeah, thank you for keeping track of that, David. Okay, 10. Okay, just make sure, right, when you do a ls or do a directory, you should see that your manage.py is there. Now, this is where your terminal should be kept at. How to bring this up? This is actually control backtick. So control plus the backtick, right? That will bring up your terminal. Just make sure that you are always in this terminal where you see manage.py. So what I like to do is I like to usually, let me show you what I like to do. What I like to do is I usually just split this up into like 2 shells. So I have a shell here and I have a shell on the right, and I just keep this shell, at least one of the shell, to be constantly at the same, at least one shell will be constantly in here. So that's what I like to do. And then here I can experiment. So later on I can do something like Python, manage.py, and I can do shell and I can go into a shell and I can work on things like that. But right now I just don't have to worry about that. Let me see where am I. I'm change directory to August. List, change directory to August again, list. Okay, so I'm gonna clear all that screen. Okay, so okay, done. So right now we have what? 10, 11. Are we still waiting for anyone? If we're not waiting for anyone anymore, then I'm gonna go in to create our app, okay? So let's go ahead and start to create our app. So again, just to remind you, when I do a ls or do a dir, which is directory, I should always see manage.py in here, because if you don't, a lot of commands won't run because it calls for that function. So I'm gonna call manage.py, and now instead of calling run server, I'm gonna call start app. So what does start app do? Start app basically creates a new app in your project. So the way this is, you can think about this as a big project comprising a lot of apps. Like, for example, you have an app called machine learning app. You have an app called user login logout app. You have an app called survey app. So for example, like pedagogy. Pedagogy has a few components, right? It has the analytics app. It has the team viewer app. It has the review, the survey app. So pedagogy is comprised of a lot of like main functionalities. So startup allows you to create an app so that all of this belongs to one project, but you can package, you can organize your code better. Okay, organize your logic better. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually go put a startup right here to start an app, and I'm gonna call my app. What do we want to call it this time? We want to call it what is the idea here? What is your idea again? Maybe Iqbal, can you explain to me a bit of like what your app should be doing, so I have a right picture of what we should be coding here.
Okay, so the app will handle how we manage to pair between students' assignment and mentor and how they score it.
The mentor would be basically a many-to-many relationship with, no, not really. It's a one assignment ticket can have how many mentor? Multiple?
One assignment for one mentor.
So this is pretty much assignment ticket, and this is pretty much assignee, right? Like who is assigned.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and create a simple let's create let's just call it picket. Okay, so I'm gonna call Python manage.py startup picket. Now I have an app called picket. Within my picket, if you go and take a look at it, you look at the picket, you see a lot of things here, like admin models and stuff. All of these stuff are already in there. So you can name it anything you want, yeah? Because I'm trying to understand this one and I'm trying to implement it. But if you have your own app idea, you want to create your own beautiful API idea, go ahead and name it whatever that makes sense to you, to your idea. But once you create a start app, you should see that a new folder has been created with a lot of the boilerplate files. I want you to open up the models.py. Okay, open up models.py. So I always start from a database. You always start from a database because whatever you want to create here, you always start from a database. It allows you to make sure your idea is sound and logical and clear. So open up models.py and make sure you are in there. Okay, all good. You guys are good. Yeah. Everyone created a new app. Yeah, created a new app and then move in there. I'm gonna probably move this over to. Oh, I'm just gonna copy this. Can't move this into a incognito mode. Right. Okay. So once you created a, this is your app. Create a first app. We're not gonna do the views now. We're not gonna move all of this. We're gonna just start from. Yeah, I mean we can do the views too, but now that we have an app here, we can also create super user, I guess. But here it recommends the documentation recommends that you create a view before you do that. So let's actually follow some of that and let's actually open up views as well. So open up views. What I like to do is I open up my views on the right hand corner and I open up my models on the left corner. So I typically open that and I move them into the right hand side like that. But here, because I'm blocked by my views here, so I'm going to keep it to the left, or maybe I can just move it slightly like that. All right. So I now have my views in here on the, and it says from here, create a response. Okay. So remember what I said earlier at the beginning of this session, I said you can only respond when there's a request. So every server basically handles it the same way. When there's a request, there's a response, but you can only send a response when there's a request. So here, the main idea here is to ask you to say, okay, first of all, import from Django.http, import HTTP response. So I want you to just go up here. You can create from Django.http, import HTTP response. Okay, that will give you HTTP response. And then what you want to do next is you can create your first view. Now your view is obviously going to use the template later on, but for now, it recommends that you just do something very simple. So you can say something like define index, and you can say request. So it takes a request. And then what does it return? It returns the HTTP response. So here we're saying accept a request. Return simple string. You can enter any string. You don't have to type in the whole thing. It's a bit too long. Okay. And then in Python, when you write a function, you always want to add an extra line at the end. That's how it knows that the function terminates. Like that's the end of the function. So always add an extra line at the end of that. Okay. So here, for example, you can say something like, hello world, you're looking at Picket. Okay. This could also be a JSON object later on. I'll teach you how to do that. But right now, just return a simple response. So whenever somebody go to the main index, return that. But how do you link this? How do you wire this to your app? You need to use the urls.py, right? To wire that up. So the next step it will ask you to do is to wire that up using your urls.py. So within your Picket itself, there should be no urls.py right now. So what I want you to do is to just create a urls.py. Like that. Okay. So now under Picket, I have urls.py and I have my views.py. So under urls.py, what does it do? It says, go ahead and create a path. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and say from Django.urls, import path. And then within the path itself, it says from this current directory, import views. So you can go ahead and do it to one of two ways. You can say from Django from apps.august import views. I think I missed out something, right? apps.august. Picket like that. And then, but it says it can't find. Well, I guess the other way you can do that is to just use relative path. That is the absolute path. August Picket views.py. The other one is to just say from this directory. This is basically this current directory. So from current directory, import views, which is this one. And then from the views itself, you have the views.index, because this is what we call it, right? So go ahead and actually say, create a URL patterns. And then you say from here, you put in a square bracket. So this is all the URL that you need to find. You can call it like that, but you can also name it anything you want. So for example, if I call this homepage, then I will change this to views.home, like that. So it's up to you, right? But really what it's doing here is saying that in the views.py, I have a function called home. And here I'm importing from the current directory. From the current directory, find the views.py. I know they're in the current directory because this is the same directory. So here's the views, here's the URLs, they're in the same directory. So I said from the same directory, import views. Now views is here. So it says, okay, now I have views in here. What do you want? I says, find the home. And within home itself, take the home, pass it here. And if somebody doesn't enter anything here, then return to the home page, go back to the home page, right? So this all looks very confusing and stuff, but let me launch the server and it makes more sense. So let me go ahead and say python.py, run server. Okay, it's running. Let me go ahead and refresh the page. And if I type picket, hold on a second, let's see. Did I save this yet? Oh, okay, we forgot to wire that up as well. So let's go ahead and wire that up as well. Let's wire up the urls.py. So now I want you to open up another urls.py. This time it's actually under the August urls.py. This is the main urls.py. And then from here, it says there's a URL pattern. So go ahead and say path. And then if somebody go to picket, then you want to include pickets.urls. So include is not here. So you need to go ahead and it's probably not here, this one, like that. Okay. So if I do this and I refresh the page now, you see, I'm looking at this. Okay. So step by step. Okay. Step by step. Now, the first thing, go into step 1, step pertama, create views.py, create a function, name the function anything you want. Because for me, it's just the home page. I'm going to call it home. You can name it anything you want. All right. You can name it index if you want. All right. And give it a simple string here. It doesn't matter what you type. That's step number 1. Step number 2, create urls.py under the same directory. So within there, you want to say, okay, if the path look like that, the path look like that, meaning if there is nothing behind here, okay? If I actually put in something like hello, now if I run this, it won't work anymore. But I have to type in a hello here. Now it works. So basically the path here is saying that if somebody requests this API, or if I put API here, if I refresh this, it doesn't work anymore. But if I type API, then it works. Okay. So basically here it's saying that how do you want a URL? What kind of URL do you want to target? Here I'm targeting somebody who entered the URL and then followed by a slash, followed by a API. Okay. If I look at the URLs here, it says that if somebody goes to the picket, then include everything that you find in here. Is this actually confusing? I feel like it is somehow.
Sam, yang urls.py yang di sebelah kanan itu dari direktor yang mana ya?
Ini yang main directory.
Oh.
So there is my project August. This is my main project August kan. Within my main project August, there is already a urls.py.
Oh, I see.
But within it, there is also a directory called picket. This is my app, right?
Yeah.
And within my app, I also have a urls.py, right? You can. So yeah. So what I'm trying to do here is this. Now this is how you explain that. I'm saying in the urls.py for this main August, I say that if this guy goes to our website, which is algorithm.ma, if this guy go to /picket, then delegate everything by looking at picket.urls. Now, where does it find that? It finds it here. Okay. So it says if it goes to picket, then delegate that to urls.py. So then it says urls.py. What do you want me to do? It says, okay, look after picket. What is this? And here it says API. So because here it says API, so you expect that if the API is in here, if this is actually API, then take this and execute what? Execute views.home. So execute views.home. But where is views.home? Views.home is under views.py. I know it's a bit confusing here, but this is kind of the whole setup of that. This is like, I think probably the most confusing part of the whole thing. But see if you understand this and take a second to see if you can get this running of your questions and stuff. But if you manage to get this done, you should be able to go to your URL. You should be able to open that up. And you should be able to type in API and you should be able to see exactly the same response. Because we make a request to this URL, we get a response back. Okay, if you want to, you can change things. You can say API service. And if you refresh the page, you see that it got updated to API service. Is this idea clear? Do you want me to go through it one more time? Can I go through it one more time with you? So like create another view just to do it one more time? Would that be better?
Ya, boleh, Sam.
Okay, let me clear all of this and let me starting over again. Let me clear all of this now. Okay, so step number 1. Okay, I'm gonna follow the step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, so let me step number 1. Step 1, I said create a views.py. So let me go create another view now. I'm gonna create another view. I'm gonna say sign up account. So I'm gonna give you a sign up link. So I'm gonna say request, and then I'm gonna also put in a simple HTTP response because I don't want to code the logic yet. I want to teach you about the main idea right now. So I'm gonna say account registration. You need an algorithm email for this service. Very, very simple. It's exactly the same as the first one, except it returns a different string. But now my views is called signup. Now it's going to be views.signup. Okay. So this is my step 1. So I want you to go ahead. Don't panic here. Go into your service. Go into your app name. So my app name is called Picket. So I'm going to go into Picket. Under Picket, I'm going to have my views.py. Within here, create your views, your logic. Okay, so create that step by step. Import datetime from datetime, import datetime. Datetime.now. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just add some logic, simple logic in here, right? So I'm gonna no big deal here, but let me just go ahead and also say it from datetime import datetime. Okay, and then I'm gonna just response here. I'm gonna put an F string, account registration, and I'm gonna just put a simple datetime.now. That's it. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep a simple, very simple one. This is step 1. Okay, step 1 is done. Everyone, step 1 is done. You already have a views.py with a function with any name you give it, but a function. Everyone have this done. Step 1. Done, yeah. Okay, step 2. In the same directory, there is a urls.py in the same directory. And because it's the same directory, we can just say from dot meaning from the current directory. So for example, if I go and use my Python, if I go up to my Python right now, and I say list dot, it basically lists all the files in my current directory. Right? So dot is basically this directory. Dot means what? Dot means one directory up. If I say list dot, it means go up to one level above. But ls dot, it says directory, current directory. So I go to my urls.py, and I said from my current directory, import the views.py. Why is it called views.py? Because that's what you name it. You name it views.py. So this is all basic Python. This is not really like fancy Django or anything, right? From the current directory, import views. Now I want to do this for the urls.py. Make sure this is also in the same directory as the picket. Within here, I want you to add the path. So I'm going to add the path here. Within this path, I'm going to call it anything you want, but this time I'm going to call it sign up. And then now the sign up itself here, oh, I have another extra closing. That's it. That's good. With the sign up itself, so what is this going to do is that if somebody go into /sign up, then it should bring this up. They don't have to be the same thing, by the way. It could be called anything. It can be called new user. It can be called like that as well. It's up to you. Okay, it can be called new user, but I'm going to call it sign up because I see no reason to make it fancy. I just keep it the same name, so I can call it sign up. Okay, so what this is saying is that every time somebody go to a /API, return home. Why? Because that's what it says. But every time somebody goes to sign up, look at what views.signup. So go to views.py and look for the sign up function. So this is the views.py. This is the sign up function. So call this function. And every time somebody requests for this, what do? You always need to respond. You always need to respond. That's what the server is doing. That's rule number one. Request, response. When somebody requests for something, you respond for something. Okay. So far, so good. Step number 2, everyone is done with this. Step 1, step 2. Step 2, everyone is done. Step 3. Step 3, there is the base URL. And you can find that in the main project folder. So you can find it in the main project folder. This is not the same as the picket URLs, but this is the main project URLs. So this one controls everything, right? This is the main controller of the URL, okay? So you can search for that by going into your directory here, or you can do Control P or Command P, and then you can just search urls.py. That's what I usually do anyway. So I type Command P, Control P, urls.py. For the rest of you, go to your base urls.py, and you basically say create a new path. But here it says from the picket itself, every time somebody go to algorithm.ma, this is your main root, right? If this guy goes to picket / then take whatever that is in here. Take whatever is in here and delegate that to picket.urls. Now, what is picket.urls? That's the urls.py under pickets app. So urls.py under pickets app. So the picket app itself has a url.py. It says take that, include that. So right now, it would allow people to go to your URL, type /picket/ and anything. If the / is /API, then it will call this. If it's /signup, then it will call this. Now, if you can do this correctly and you want to test that, then I want you to just go ahead and just run your server. So go ahead and say Python manage.py run server. So go ahead, manage.py run server. And then once you run server, go in there and click on this API, run it, make sure it looks good, and then remove that. And then now try the sign up. Bam, done. So it all works perfectly. Okay, so now you have the URLs, you have the logic, everything is glued together. Okay, I'm gonna stop here a second to give you time to like work on it. But this is how mine currently looks like. If you manage to get all the way up to this point, can you give me some confirmation that you successfully
Set.
yeah.
Baru set, yeah. I have an error set.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so it says picket.views has no attribute home, right?
Yeah.
Did you have the home here on views.py?
Wait.
Oh, by the way, I should commit as well, yeah? So any one of you can just look at the code directly on GitHub, right? Let me do
boleh
that.
tuh. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me do that. Sorry for that. I forgot. I mean, that's the whole point. We set up a GitHub right there. Git add everything. Git add everything. Git commit. First milestone. Those of you who have done it, very, very good. You know, if this is very confusing to you, but you manage to wrap your head around things, it will get better. So git push origin main. Okay. So Yosia, Ina, Fafil, Tommy, if you guys are successful, right? Two things you can do now is to look at those who are not successful, help them out, because when you help other people out, you also learn something new. Second is that try to create another view, this time without my help. Create another view. Challenge yourself a bit. Create another view where you call sign out or something, up to you, and then within it, link it to your URLs and then link it to your main URL. Try and see if you can do step 1, step 2, step 3 without my assistance. If you already succeed in the first step, if you're not, then continue to take your time. Don't worry. Okay, I'm gonna wait here for at least another 2 or 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. So take your time. We're not in a hurry at all. Okay, so take your time. Try to understand the concept here. Like, what is happening? Why do you need a server to respond something? How do you link that up? Try to wrap your head around that. If you manage to do it the first time, you realize that you will not have to touch the urls.py bottom here. You don't have to touch this because it's already wired this up. You already wired these two up. So all you need to do is to change views.py and change urls.py. Okay, so there's only step 1, step 2 now. How are you guys doing? Are you guys Hussein, are you getting somewhere? What about the rest?
Yeah. Hello, Sam. Sorry, it's the unmute. Still fixing the error, Sam.
Okay. If you look at your views, right? So
yeah,
do you have this in the views?
I already update from your repo GitHub.
Oh, you already update. Okay.
Yeah. So I need to.
Yeah.
Should I put comma on the end of path or no?
Should you put comma at the end of where?
In line 7.
This one? On line 7, yeah. Yeah. Typically, I put a comma.
Okay.
Typically, I put a comma, but it doesn't matter. You know why I put a comma usually?
Yeah.
The reason why I usually put a comma at the end of this is that because when you use Git, right? When you use Git, yeah. When Git basically goes and it finds the line that are differentiated, plus minus, right? So for example, if you add a new line, here and you say path, if you don't put a comma, then all of a sudden you need to modify 2 lines when actually you just added 1 line. You know what I mean? It's like Git will show, Git is gonna say something like minus this, and then Git is gonna say something like plus, and then Git is gonna actually do something like that, where it would imagine that this line got removed and then this line got added because it adds a comma. So I typically just leave a comma at the end of it, because you can do that in Python. This is not a Django thing. This is a Python thing. Python allows you to do that. Python allows you to create a tuple. Like you can create a tuple doing something like 3, like this, right? You can say X, Y. You can do that.
I see.
Like in Python, this is acceptable. You can also have X, Y, 3, 4, 5. You can also have something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's acceptable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I usually put a comma.
Kalau di R pasti error kan biasanya.
Ya pasti error.
Yeah.
Soalnya kalau di R kan ini kan dia this becomes like a subset, you know, where you put the comma. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Oh, good to hear. Do you know where you got it wrong, Hussein? Like, you know what is it that you fixed that got it to work again?
Ya, I think yang the urls.py-nya kurang lengkap gitu, Sam.
Oh, okay.
Hey Sam.
Yeah.
Should we take a break?
Yeah, I was about to propose that because it's already like 12, right? I was about to propose this. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go. Yeah, I'm gonna keep my screen on here in case anyone is copying, but I'll go for a quick sort of breakfast lunch, and then you guys also, and then when we are all back, we can resume. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, drink a lot of water, stay healthy, eat some fruit. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, bye. Okay, Sam, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Any
I
other
ask
questions?
something? Hello.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. In the views.py, there is some function that we create, right? And
Yeah.
basically, this function is represent the page of the page, right?
Mm.
If I let's say if I want to create a request, not just a request like post or get like that.
Yeah.
Should I create a new function or create a parameter on that function?
Okay, this is an excellent question. It goes to using Rest Framework, but later on, are you familiar with the Python decorator? Are you familiar with what is a decorator?
No.
Okay, but have you seen something like that? Have you seen something like login required? Have you seen a decorator like that?
Yet, but I don't clearly know about that.
Yeah, don't worry. So later on, your logic will go into something like if request.method. If request method goes in like that, then return this. So later on, we haven't seen that yet, but later on, you will modify your stuff, and then you have this. You said, okay, if the request method is this, well, else, or you can say return HTTP 404. Now HTTP 404, they don't exist, so you have to import that right up here, like that.
Oh,
so later
basically,
on, sorry, what's the question?
Basically, the parameter of the sign up is represent what represent. Maksudnya si request itu nge-represent dari apa?
The request.
Can you
the request.
get it? The parameter request of the function in sign up and the home.
Yeah, this one, right?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're saying that what does it represent? Yeah, like where does it get from? Where does it get request from?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, when you try to go to sign up, when you go to this URL, like what I'm trying to do here is, if I go into this sign up, right? If I look at my inspect element, and I look at my network, and I'm gonna preserve my logs. Do you see what just happened if I refresh my page? Okay. So how you get this thing is you right click and you say inspect. Or you open up the DevTools, you go to developer and you go to DevTools. And then when you open up DevTools, go into the network. So go into network and see what network requests are you making. And if you click into this one, you see that it's making a request here.
Okay.
It's making a request. If you click onto this one, it says this is your request. What is the request method? It's a get. Do you see that? And then it says if the request method is a get, this is the request URL. This is the request. So remember, our server only responds. Our server would never initiate something. Our server always listens to requests and then responds to something. So when you actually go to sign up, when somebody go to open up a web browser, type in algoritma.me/sign up, that's a request. Now that request contain a few meta information, and the few meta information you can access them through like request.method, request.data, stuff like that. If it's a else, let's put another one here, right? Let's put another one. Okay. We said elif if request.method, oops, if this is a get, wait, this is a get. This should be a get. Okay. If this is a post, then you want to do something with your data. So here you can say return. You can first check if request.data equals to sign up. Do something. Else, again, you can return a HTTP bad request like that. So basically, what you there is nothing in here, so it cannot yeah, like that, right? But later on you can start to write out your request, and you say, okay, if it's a get request, post request is when you submit a form, kan? So when you submit a form, then your request will have an extra attribute called data, and you will find that under data in here. But right now we're doing a get request, so we don't have any data. But later I'll show you how to post a request with a data, and then you have a data, and you can take the data and you say if the data equals this or whatever that is, then you get a response. Now this is the response. The response is what? It says a HTTP account registration, you need an algorithm email for this service. So that is your response. So this is your HTTP response. So remember, all of these functions that you write here, yeah, all of these functions, they always have to return response. Doesn't matter what you do. If the request is crap, you need to return and say, oh, that's a response. You say, oh, the request is bad, or you need to return a HTTP 404 or something. But all your request method always takes a request and they always return a response. Okay, so generally speaking, all the requests, all this stuff that is handled in here, they should always take a request, they should always return a response.
Okay, I see. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, okay, no problem. So let's go back to all of the change of all this stuff. But this is not a very clean way of writing that, because later on when you use the Django Rest Framework, there is an even better of writing that, and I'll talk about that later. But here I'm just trying to explain like where did this request come from? Like what is that request come from? Or the request basically is that every time somebody accesses this page, they are making a request. They are making a request. They are requesting for that. So that is what the request is. If you want to, you can actually try and write a print statement here and print the request and see what happened here, right? So let's go into the sign up right now, click on that, and let's go into the console, not the console, but let's click on the network here. But let's actually go into our console, which is this one. You see, it says a get request here. So if you print the request.method, believe it's this one. And you go back in here, you request, you say, it says here what? It says get. You see that? So if you don't believe me, let me just do it more explicitly. If request method get print Yahoo. Okay. So if this request method is not get, I wouldn't be able to see this Yahoo, right? So let me refresh the page. Did I see Yahoo? I did. And I see Yahoo because request.method is get. Do you know what I mean here? It's like every time you request this page. Now let me do that again. Let me clean all of this, okay? Clean all of this, clear everything. Remember, there is nothing in here. I'm gonna run my server now. Run my server now, okay? So my server has nothing right now, but let me refresh the page, make a request, bam, Yahoo. Because my request method is get. Just to show you just to give you even more confidence, I'm gonna say if the request method is post, I'm gonna say boo. Okay, refresh. I didn't see boo. Why did I not see boo? Because the request method is not post. Okay, is that idea clear? Like what does the request represent? Is that clear?
Very clear.
Okay, so let's remove the print statement now. No need for that now. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what you're doing. Every time you go to a website, whether or not you're aware of that, or whether you open up Tokopedia app, whether you're aware of that, every single time you use an app, you use a website, you use a service, anything like that, you are making a request. Whether or not you're aware of that action, you say, no, I'm actually just opening up Tokopedia app. Yes, you're making a request here. You're making a request to Tokopedia homepage. Every time you do that, the server needs to respond to something. So that's the whole request response cycle. Any other questions? No questions? If there are no questions, then we can continue on. Now we go into part 2. Okay, this is where I talk about the ORM. Okay, ORM is really, really cool. Like one of the most powerful features of Django is the ORM. It's allowing you to create models without you actually having to write SQL. Okay, and that has a lot of benefits, which we already explained. So I don't want to go into that again. But there are so many benefits to that. There are so many benefits to that, and I talk about like how that was easier to version control, allows you to write things in a more Pythonic way without you having to worry about the database implementation, because it would take care of that for you. It would translate what you write and connect that for you, right? So now I want you to go up to your app, whether you call it Picket or call it something, doesn't matter. But there is a models.py created for you already. When you do a Python manage.py start app, when you do a Python manage.py start app, and you put in your app name, doesn't matter what you do with your app name, this command is going to create a few files. One of them is the views.py, one of them is the models.py. So I want you to open up models.py right now. And within models.py, you should see nothing in here. And then from here, I want you to start to implement your own logic. Okay, if you already have an app that you're thinking about, you can start to implement that. If you don't have that, you can use the one that I'm using here, which is the idea from Iqbal. Okay, so in the ORM world, each of these is basically going to be a table, right? This is going to be a table. On all of these are going to be a table, but also all of these are going to be a class in the ORM. So basically, what the ORM would do is that it will find within your models.py, every time it finds a Django model, a class, anything that is a subclass of Django models, so this is the class that inherit from Django's.models, then it will go ahead and create a database table. Right? So if you want to have, let me ask you a question here. If you want to have, wait, where's my app? Yeah. If you want to have this exact setup, how many tables do you need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So how many classes do you expect to write at a minimum? 7. Okay. So that's how you create your models. You create 7 different classes. Each one represent one table, and the class would, they would pretty much inherit from the Django models, Django.db import models. Okay. So let's go ahead and do our first one. Have you guys got already models.py open already? Open that somewhere, like I don't know, on the right pan, on the left panel, up to you, but open that somewhere. Ready? Okay, let's write our first one. Okay, I'm gonna open this one on the side so I can see things clearly. So I'm gonna keep this on the left. I'm gonna give myself some space to work here, some more room to work with, like that. Okay, now I want to create a students table first. So I'm gonna go ahead and say class, and here the first table is gonna be student. It's gonna be student. So what do? We say student. By the way, one good practice is that all your tables should be singular, not plural. So even though Iqbal here implemented students, you don't want to have students, you want to have student. Oh, by the way, if you realize what just happened on my screen, did you see what just happened on my screen? You see the autocomplete? Pretty intense, right? that is actually the GitHub Copilot, tries to complete my code for me. So if I press that, like the whole thing is done. I'm done. I can move on to my second one. I can now create my class. I can create mentors. And then if I put models.model, and then let it complete this code for me, and he's give me like pretty intense, right? It just complete my entire thing for me. It's GitHub Copilot. But anyway, this is not really learning. So yeah, it can do a lot of things. It's crazy. I was demoing this. It does a lot of things. It writes tests for you. It does all of this stuff. But let's not cheat. Let's go back. Let's go back here. Okay. So you see, before I even try to complete it, so the first thing is that when I create a instance later, this is gonna take the Django is gonna look at this and it's gonna say, oh, so you need a database called student table, and it will do that for me. But it needs to know what goes into my table, right? So what are the fields in my table? This is where I define them as the within my class itself. So first of all, I will have Iqbal's idea is you have email, you have name, and you have join at. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with email, right? Now email itself, if I put an email, a lot of you will be tempted to put a char field because that's what Iqbal did as well. There's a var char. But turns out in Django, you don't actually do that. In Django, there's something called the email fill. So you would say something like email, and you say models.email fill, and you give it a max length. So typically what 254 is quite good. Unique is true is quite good because you want each of them to have a unique email. So it means that in the table, you should not have somebody signing up with the same email. If somebody used Nayoko@algorithm.ma, the second guy cannot go in there and register for a new student, cannot create a new student instance with exactly the same email. So I want to put unique equals to true in this case, right? So I wouldn't use a raw chart, I would use an email field because it would also do the validation for you. So it would validate. Later on, I'll show you when you do an email field, if the student entered invalid email, it would automatically throw an error saying that this is not a valid email. So that's kind of it. So I would have my email field. That's the first one. Then I would have the name. So I'm going to go ahead, name. Name is quite simple. It's just a char field. It's just basically anyone can have any name. It would accept any kind of things like spaces, like dots, like dash, any kind of things. As long as it's a char field, basically accepts anything. I think one confusion is some people will say, well, what about text field? Would it be possible to have a text field? The difference between the text field and the char field is that the text field basically, it is basically a big text like this, where a char field is a character field. So this is something like comment, for example. Like, do you have any comment for our instructor? That can be implemented as a text field. But the reviewer name usually implemented as a char field, right? So text field is usually, it would, on the front end, it would display it as a big text field that allows you to enter comment. Yosia is the best instructor we have, this, and they can have a text field like that, and that usually makes more sense. In this case here, text field doesn't really make that much sense. I would probably go back to char field. So let me change that and go back to char field. Hold on a second. Do I want to put unique here? What do you guys think? Should I put a unique true for name? What do you guys think?
No.
Yosia said, of course. Of course, to Yosia is a great instructor, or unique, or because the name itself. Not unique. Why? Because you expect that, especially with Indonesia, a lot of us don't have last names, kan? Like a lot of Indonesians don't have last name. So you basically have a name called Tommy, and the first name is Tommy, and there's no last name. So if you put a unique equal to true, your database is gonna reject any kind of Tommy after the first Tommy. So that's gonna be a problem, right? So the answer is no. Okay, let's go and see what else did he have. Students also have a join add field. Join add field. Now, before I start to write this, what do you guys think should be the field? What field would be good for the join add?
Date time.
Yeah, it's a date time field, right? So if I put a join add, this is not my model, okay? This is basically Iqbal's model. You see a date time field. Okay, what is this auto now add true? What does this do? This is okay, but why is there an option to auto add now add? So auto now add basically says that every time a new student instance is being created, so every time somebody calls students.create, if somebody calls student.create, he only need to pass in the email and the name. The join add will be automatically created for him. So I can say Tommy, and I can say email, and that will be Tommy@email.com. And this will be okay because join add will be automatically created. Okay, so then this guy doesn't have to put in a join add. Like this guy doesn't have to manually code the join add because it would just be an automatic fill because it's a auto now add equals to true. And by the way, speaking of all of these different things that you're just learning right here, all of this, I don't know what's happening to my chat, but I couldn't go into my chat anymore. Everyone join. Okay, sorry. I couldn't erase. It wouldn't let me erase. I have to type that in. Doesn't mean anything. Sorry. But if you want to look at all of this, you can type Django model fields. And you see there is this models fields, and if you click on the models itself, you click on the fields itself, it gives you a list of all the fields that you can use. So I'm going to place this in here. You see there are things like fields. It gives you things like char field. It gives you field types. It gives you all of this stuff. It gives you choices field. It gives you things like, there are a ton of fields that you can use, right? And you can click on field types. Yeah, there's actually such a long list of things, but we're gonna take it one thing at a time. Right now, we don't have to read up all of this stuff, but just know that there is a lot of things. For example, it also has the date field instead of the date time. It also has the integer field, and integer field is such a crazy stuff because it has the positive integer, it has the small integer, you have the big integer, you have the positive small integer, positive integer, and then you have a positive small integer. So I'll show you all of this. I said, let me create a number. And I can say something like models dot. You look at all the integer fields that it has. Integer fields, positive small integer, autofill, float field, text field, like just the integer itself, there's so many of them, right? And if you don't know what each one of them does, you can click on the, you can sort of like look up at the documentation. You can also try and read it up here. From here, it tells you what it is and stuff. But positive small integer actually goes pretty huge. If you look at the positive small integer itself, positive small integer, it goes all the way up to 32,767. So this is actually quite a lot of quite enough of them. So if, for example, I have the number of lessons, if number of lessons, somebody can take a lot of lessons, somebody could take 20 lessons. So let's say this one counts the number of DSS that this guy has signed up for. This one counts the number of DSS, the number of Kickstart, the number of Academy, the number of other workshops. Every workshops, usually you can have this as an integer field because it's never going to be a float. It can be an integer field, but never be a float. But you can also have this as a, this is correct. This is also correct. This is also correct. All the three of them will be correct because positive small integer give you all the way up to 37. So most likely somebody in the lifetime, in the reasonable lifetime, is not going to exceed 767. So all of these are all okay. So if you want to like look up all the possible fields here, and this is so crazy, and look at the big integer field. This one goes up to this amount. Like this is such a massive amount, right? So this is a positive integer field. Right, so I'm gonna give you this link. So you have time, you can go and read up more about that. But I just want to mention that there are so many different things. So when it comes down to implementing this stuff, you want to think about optimization all the time. You want to think about like what is reasonable. In this case here, do I need integer? Do I need positive integer? Or do I just need positive small integer? Integer actually, this one without the positive, it means that the number can go from negative, like it's a huge number. Integer field here. See, it goes from this number to this number. This to this. Positive integer go from 0 to this. Go to this, positive integer. Oh, this is small integer. So this one goes down here, right? And then there's positive, and then there's also positive big integer. So think about all the possibilities that you can have here. So just try to implement something that is reasonable and sensible. If you don't need a database to provision for that kind of space, don't do that because then it's not being optimal, right? So here in this case, I'll keep it to positive, but I also like to add a default. I like to add a default so that if I added a new user, the default is 0, meaning the person did not sign up for any lessons, it's going to be 0. And then later on, he take a DSS, that will be added by 1. Okay, so this is kind of how my first model is going to look like. I can also have a null equals to true and blank equals to true. Basically, I'm gonna say maybe null equals to false, but blank equals to true or something. You know, if you don't want it, you can say blank equals to false, but that is the default option. Okay, so unique equals to true. If the unique equals to true, then you cannot have a blank equals to true. If there is this makes sense because if unique equals to true, it means that each email must be unique, which means you can never have a blank email. Okay, so that is already wrong. If you already have unique equals to true, and then you try and put a blank equals to true, you're saying that, okay, accept a blank email. How do you accept a blank email when each email has to be unique equals to true? So it wouldn't throw an error, but it logically is flawed. It's a logically flawed thinking. So you're not thinking properly. So don't leave it there. Here, I guess if you want to put a blank equals to true, then you have to understand that there will be people who can submit with a blank field. So that's up to you how you want to implement that. Let's take a look at what Iqbal implement. He did not actually mention anything about whether or not it can be blank, but we're gonna assume that it's false. Yeah. So I'm not gonna keep. I'm gonna say you cannot put a blank field. You do need a name. I don't know. It's up to your system, depending on how you want to implement. This is your application. If you're doing Pokemons, you probably have very different fields from student. So go ahead and implement it on your own. Okay,
Sam,
I'll give you like 1 or 2 minutes to get there. Yeah. Any questions?
How to put primary key, Sam, in this class?
It's completely automatic, so you don't have to set up your own. If you want to set up your own, you can do something like this, but you would put something like auto integer field, and you have to set up primary key equals to true. But this is completely optional. If you don't do this, this will be provided to you completely by default.
I see. Okay, sip. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's up to you. Yeah. If you don't want to, you can just remove it. How come it's only David and Hussein and Iqbal that is asking me question? What about the rest? What about Tommy? What about Yossi also asked me a question about what about the rest? You guys have any questions so far? Or is this like too easy and like it's boring and like I already know this stuff, you know, just like, is there any other questions from maybe Ulan? Ina also asked me questions already, but what about the rest? If you haven't asked me questions.
Sam, I want to ask you something. If the primary key is not ID, let's say it's an email, so we have to set it as a primary key there as a parameter, right?
Correct.
Okay,
so you put a primary key, yeah. You go into this one and you put a primary key equals to true. Like this is what you would do if you want this to be a primary key.
Yeah. But if it's a foreign key, so we have to set it as a foreign key also?
Yes, if you have a foreign key, you have something like, let's say we have a class enrollment.
Yep.
Okay. So we have class enrollment. You will say model.foreign key, and then you refer to this class which we haven't created. So ideally you would have your class, and then you have class enrollment.
Okay then. Okay.
Yeah, then you refer to this. So I'm going to move this down to this one. And here I'm going to have student ID, and that will be student. And then later on, I'll have a class ID, which would actually just be a foreign key as well. Oh, but you don't want to put the same class here. So you want to put a class. Because this is going to clash with the keyword here. So you don't want to use the class. You want to give it a different word. So what do we call it here? What is a good one? Maybe class. Okay. And we put a foreign key. And then here we haven't created that. So let's not worry, but we're going to create it now. So let's take a look at Iqbal's design again. Again, I feel like you really should take the time to practice doing ERD. Yeah? If you have never done something like that before, use a pen and paper. Don't worry about like using cool like software and stuff. Or you can ask Iqbal what he used for this. What do you use for this? dbdiagram.io, right? I really recommend you get good at thinking about this. This one train a lot of like logical thinking. If you want to build good products in the future, you want to be a good software engineer, you want to be good software architects and stuff. This is such an undervalued skill. People don't. Like it's cool, you know how to do things when things are already done for you. Like you just have to connect it, pandas, numpy and stuff. But like try to practice this, and then get feedback. Try to get feedback. Get it from Iqbal, get it from me, get it from whoever you can find. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create our class. I'm gonna create a class. Same thing here. I'm gonna have models.model. And what do I have here? I just have a name, so that's gonna be very simple. And then now I can reference my class here. Okay, and then I I'm also going to put an on delete. Okay, so what is on delete going to do? On delete is going to say, on delete is going to say, now that I have a student, and then now I have an enrollment model. So I have an enrollment table here, right? And then I have a student table here. Now, the question here is, let's say I have a row. Row number 1, student refer to, let's say we say Arjun. She's not here, so Arjun. And then class. Class, we say class Argon, our first ever class. What happened if Arjun discontinue her study after 2 weeks? So she signed up for Algoritma. After 2 weeks, she decided that it's too hard. I can never get good at this. Not for me. And she decided to drop out. So what happened is that in your student table, you're gonna try to delete Arjun as a student anymore, because after 2 weeks, she decided it's not for her. You deleted her record from the table, right? What is this gonna do to this table? Because when you delete Arjun from the student table, now this is gonna refer to a row that doesn't exist anymore, because Arjun doesn't exist in this table anymore. So what's gonna happen? So this is implemented here on delete. What do you want it to do, right? So there are a few choices here that are very common. One is to say models dot set null. Set null basically says that if Arjun deleted herself because she no longer want to follow the class, then what's going to happen is this value become null, because remember, Arjun doesn't exist anymore. She's deleted from this table. So that's one option. The other option is to use cascade. I mean, there's a few other options, but another very common option is to use cascade. Cascade is saying that if Arjun deleted here, then we should also delete her enrollment here. So that is cascading. Okay, so everything that uses a foreign key here, cascade. If let's say we have a student score, we have a score table. So how much? What is the score? What is Arjun's score? But if we deleted Arjun because it's a data entry error, then this should also delete here. That is cascade. So that is cascade. The other option is to not cascade but set null. Did I explain this clearly? Do you understand this clearly?
Yes, clear, Sam.
Okay. So let me clear all my drawings here. So here you need to decide what you want to do with it. You can say, maybe we can just protect, maybe we can just cascade, maybe we can do nothing, maybe we can set null. But typically it's either cascade or set null, like that in real life, okay? Like, I mean, these are all theoretically good answers, but in real life, I either set null or I say cascade. In this case here, I said if there is a data entry error and I delete a student because it's a data entry error, I want the class enrollment to also delete that row referring to that. So I'm cascading. Okay, let's go back to Iqbal's design. By the way, I hope that you guys are like doing it on your own now and add a few other fields, because don't follow exactly what I do, because that way you don't really learn as much. You learn a lot, but not as much. Try to deviate a bit from my examples here and use your own app. I don't have an app, so I use the app that Iqbal want to build. Unless you have an app that you want me to build in front of you, then I will do it. But since no one volunteered anything, I'm going to use the one from Iqbal. So you go ahead and create your own models and implement your own stuff, right? So let's go ahead and see what else do we have here. We have.
Sam, can I add something? Should
Sure.
we define the relationship each class?
Like this one, foreign key, you mean?
Ya kan kalau di class API kan ngedefinisiin relationship-nya tuh kelas yang mana sama kelas yang mana. Kalau di Django nggak usah apa, langsung otomatis kebaca dari foreign key.
Yeah, if you're doing the foreign key, it would do everything. Later on, this is all we need is to run the migrate. So later on, when you do Python manage.py migrate, all of this is going to be created for you in your database.
Okay.
Completely automatically.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Let's see what else I need you want me to cover. I think actually let's at this point, let's do that. Let's do the migrate first, okay? So I'm gonna save all of this, right? I'm gonna save all of this. Then I'm gonna go back to my shell at the bottom. So I'm gonna click on this shell. I'm gonna stop the server right now. And if you look into your directory, you will see a database.db. That's your SQLite. We haven't actually moved to Postgre yet, but right now, I mean, since we're learning about API, not really about databases, I guess we can stick to this for now. If you try to open that up, and you can open that up in many different ways. Let me show you how you can use the GUI. If you use the GUI, you will go into your database and you click on this and you open that in your favorite editor. I don't know what you use. If you don't have a favorite editor, use Table Plus because that's easy to use. It's simple and I'm using it. So you can follow exactly the same UI. Every one of you have a database editor to open up an SQLite file. If you don't have one, you can also use the Visual Studio Code. You have that?
Yeah, Table Plus.
Yeah, you have Table Plus, right? So you just have to say open with Table Plus. Bam, it opens that up. But if you open that up and you see, okay, this is my database, there is nothing in there. There's no tables, nothing. Ya kan? Gak ada tables sama sekali kan? So how do you actually start to create tables and stuff like that? Okay, you do the migrate. So here I want you to go into your terminal and then I want you to do a Python manage.py and do a migrate. When you do a migrate, it creates a ton of table. How do you know this has been done? You open up Table Plus and you refresh. Bam. All created for you already. You see the authentication user, you see the sessions, you see all of this stuff. All of these are the tables that it needs to create, and it did create. So the command is basically Python manage.py migrate. Okay, can you guys do that for me? Manage.py migrate and then check your Table Plus or check any SQL editor. If you don't know what to use, you either use Table Plus or you use the Visual Studio Code as well. I think you can go and if you want to learn more about how to use that in your Visual Studio Code, you can go and look at my video, library. How do I do this? SQLite, this one. Okay, so you can go and read. You can go and do that on your own. I'm not gonna cover that right now because I'm just gonna assume you already have one or you're using Table Plus. But if you don't want to download the Table Plus and stuff, you can do the same thing in Visual Studio Code. I'm just not gonna. I don't want to divert too much because I really want to get you to the API side first. Okay. Now in your DB itself, have you already created all the tables? You guys saw it already? Anyone needs help? Done? Okay, what about the rest? The rest? Done? Belum? Udah belum? If you are stuck and you want to share screen and walk me through where you're stuck, you can do that, okay? It's fine. Just tell me to turn off my share screen so that you can share screen and you can walk me through where it's stuck and I can help you with that. I think at this point, it's also probably good to just git commit. First migration. Okay, what about the rest? What about Tommy? What about Wulan? Okay, go ahead. I mean, if you need help, yeah. You should see that nothing is created right now because you don't have anything yet. But you see the tables are there, you see the columns are there, you see that things are starting to make sense, you see that there is the ID, there's the password field, last login field, username field. You see that things are starting to make sense. Right? Things are starting to make sense. If you want to create a super user right now, you can do a Python manage.py create super user, just like here. Python manage.py create super user. Okay. So why don't you also try that if you are. So Python manage.py create super user. It would ask you for a username. I'm gonna put Samuel. If I put empty, it's gonna use my name Samuel. Okay, so I'm gonna put empty. It's gonna use my name Samuel. And then it asks me for my email address. I'm gonna put my algorithm email address. And then it's gonna ask me for password. I'm gonna put my password. It won't show you because that's for your own privacy, for your own protection. But you can press enter once you're done typing. Even though it won't show you, it's actually recording it. So when I press enter, it asks me for that again. I'm gonna do that again. Press enter. It says the password is too common because I type password. I say password for password. So it says, do you want to bypass the password validation and create anyway? I can press yes. Okay, done. If it's done, I want you to go back to your table plus or database editor and refresh the page. Bam, it created that for you already in your database. Do you see that? So why don't you try that? Okay, why don't you try that? This is the command I want you to try. So first of all, Python manage.py migrate. And then I want you to try Python manage.py create super user. Okay, you guys try. Yeah, I'm gonna take 1 minute to take some water because I need to drink some water. I'll be back in 60 seconds. If you want to open that, right? Look, I can actually open this from my SQLite Explorer and I can actually see it from here. So Wulan, you need to install probably the SQLite extension on Visual Studio Code, but you will see it from here, like the left. You see that? You see all the tables in here. So and then you can also say, oh, I want to look at the authentication user. If I click on this play button, it opens that up. It opens that up, and I can see, oh, that's me. See, my username is there. So yeah, you can do the whole thing in Visual Studio Code. See. Yeah, you can do the whole thing in Visual Studio Code. Ya, Wulan. Kalau nggak bisa di download Table Plus, pakai aja ini Visual Studio Code. Yeah, you can do the whole thing in here. Like I can do a lot of this. I don't recommend that kind of workflow for like really huge production work, but for now, I mean, if you're learning, I actually have like the whole video. I pasted the link earlier. That teaches you how to install that extension, and then do this and do that. So you can go and follow along that one. You can even write your SQL query. You can open up an SQL query and write your query editor right there in Visual Studio Code. So you can go and watch that on your own later and try and see if your .NET framework thing, if it's not solved yet, then you can stick to this one. For the rest of you, how are you guys doing? Oh, Yosia saying I can't open the tables with Table Plus. Do you want to share your screen and walk me through what you're facing? Do you want to do that?
Wait, Sam. Wait, let me share. Yeah.
Okay, let me stop my share. Yeah, go ahead.
Right now, share my full screen. So when I open Table Plus, wait, I
select SQL. Like you need to select SQL.
I have to create a new connection first, right?
Yeah.
So
and then SQL.
Oh, okay. And then
select SQLite database file.
oh, and then
Let's select, open. Give it a name, any name.
okay.
Okay. Test and then connect.
Test. Okay then.
Okay. Connect.
So before I tried to put it I tried to connect it with the file, but it require a password. So
Go to authentication user, off user.
Authentication user.
Off user, the top one, the off user. Yang
Okay.
number 4. Yeah, off user. No, click on no, but there's 3 tabs open. You want to close the 2 tabs. There are 3 tabs
okay.
right now. Yeah, just open 1 tab of
This
user.
one, and then
Yeah, and you see that there is nothing in here yet, right? So
Yeah,
if you
that's
click
it.
on the plus row, you can add a row. If you click on the plus row at the bottom, you can add a row, but you typically don't do that. No, at the right, on the right. Yeah,
Okay.
plus row. But you typically don't do that. What you instead should be doing is to create a Django manage.py, create super user. That's what you should be doing.
Then we have to do it right here, right? Python manage.py
py, manage.py, create super user.
with super user without
Create super user.
without
No
any
space,
space, right?
space. Yep. Press enter.
Enter.
Yeah. Okay. Put in a name. It says leave blank to use Yosia. If you want the name to be Yosia, do nothing and just press blank.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want it to be something else,
Yes. And then,
okay, then put your email address.
then it didn't show. Yeah.
It won't show. So you want to just keep typing and just keep typing again.
Okay, and then
Done.
We checked it here.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, then.
You see it? All good, right? It's
Yeah. The
Yep.
password is
Okay.
It's encrypted, right? Yeah.
It's always encrypted because you can never store a password using plain text. It's not safe.
Okay.
Encryption
then.
is good because even if your database is hacked, at least it's encrypted. You don't get the actual password.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Sam.
No problem. Welcome. Anyone who is having trouble want to share a screen? I mean, you can share a screen. I can walk you. I can solve your problem very, very quickly because I'm very familiar with this workflow. So if you have problems, instead of like scratching your head around, just share a screen, walk me through it. I can solve your problem very, very quickly. Anyone who's struggling and stuff? So right now, just to make sure that all of us get to the same point, you need to at least done the manage.py, create super user. You need to at least done this step already. What you want to call it, it's up to you, but you at least need to get past that stage. And then the next thing you want to do is you at least open up your table database, wherever it is. If it's Table Plus or if it's the SQLite Explorer in the Visual Studio Code, doesn't matter. But at least go in there and make sure that you see that that field has been created. So this is my workflow that I recommend. It's like when you code in Python or when you code in any kind of programming and stuff like that, always check your database. Always just keep it here open. Don't close it. Keep it open. And while you code, you go back there. You make sure that things are done correctly. Okay. So if you can get to this step 1 and step 2, then can you let me know that you've done that? Can you let me know that you successfully arrive at this stage? If you haven't, then it's fine. If you need help, you can share your screen. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. I'm gonna where's my stage? So no one has any problems, yeah? No one has problems? What about Hussein? Hussein, you okay? Okay, all right. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what happened here if I run my server now. If I say python manage.py, run server. Okay, the server is up and running. If I copy that and I go into my server here, now this time, if I go in there and I type something like this, it says, hey, this doesn't match anything because the URL path doesn't, I haven't really coded this up yet. I haven't wired this up to anything yet, but it says it can find admin and picket. So it says that these are the 2 patterns that it can find. So I'm gonna put a /admin. And it asked me to log in to my Django. So now you can, I hope you haven't forget a password and I hope you haven't created a random password. Now I want you to go in there and log in with your own username and your password. Okay. Have you got into this interface? Very cool interface. The whole back end. I think the veterans have seen this screen before because this is what I built Corgi on, right? You've seen the whole Corgi. This is the backend for Corgi. You see exactly the same backend. That's because the whole thing is in Django as well. So if you go to Corgi and you go to the admin, this is exactly what you see. And you've seen this before because a couple of times I would show it to you on the backend. So this is basically what you have now. Now I want you to click on the users and click on the username. And then from here, you see there's an email address. There's a first name and last name. There's all this information. I want you to just put in the first name and put in your last name. Don't put my name, put your name. If you want to change the email address, you can. It's up to you. Can you guys do the first name and last name? Put in your own first name and last name. I'm going to go and click save now. If you done the save, there is the history button. If you click on the history button, you can see who did what. So this is really, really good because it's so cool. It gives you all the history of who did what. If I click on history, I see that, oh, on July 30th, 2021, 6:55 a.m., I make an action. What is the action? I change the first name and the last name. And if I look at my database right now, so this is my database, yeah? Look at my database, username, last name, first name, refresh, bam, it appears. I have my username, I have my last name, I have my first name. Everything is in there. So again, I check my database again, right? Just to make sure. So this is kind of the workflow. You always check your database after every change to make sure, especially when you're learning, when you're very new. Later on, when you become like an expert in this, then you probably don't do that anymore. But right now, as you're learning, it's always good to know that your action affects the database and you check that, you confirm that action, you come back here, and that's what you do. Let me explain a little bit here about what are things you do. There are things like active and deactive, inactive. For example, there are accounts where, let's say the student no longer become active, you can take it off and it no longer become active. If this user is no longer active, this user cannot log into the portal anymore, but the record is not going to be deleted. He just, until you activate it again, then he can log in again, okay? You can also give it super user status. So the super user can do anything, deleting database, doing login, changing things and stuff like that. Right? There is the staff status. Staff status allows this guy to log into the admin. So if this guy is not a super user and he goes to /admin, he won't be able to log in even, right? That's the staff status. And then from there, you can create groups. Groups is kind of how I do it in Corgi. It's like I would create a group and I would create a group and then, okay, let me do it right now. I can create a group here and within the group, I'm going to call it veterans. So I'm going to give it special privileges. I'm going to say my veterans can do all of this. All of these are privileges to the veterans. I can say save. So now I have a group called veterans. So anyone who is a veteran can log into my portal and do anything that I give them privileges for. All right. And I control that privileges just now, right? So then what do I do is that I can take this group, I can say add this guy into the veterans group. So you take the available group and you move it, click on the right, and you move it into the children group. So this guy now belongs to the veterans group. Okay, so later on, I can create a new user for Hussein and I can add him to this group as well. I can give him special privileges that is not given to him by his group. So maybe Hussein is very important to me. So apart from all the privileges in veterans, I want him to also be able to do other things. So I can give him special privileges in here. And then there are things like important dates, like last login, when is the date join and stuff. So I don't worry about all that. I'm just going to say save. That's kind of what it's doing. Also, by the way, all of this stuff here can be completely customized. So for example, you don't want this to be called Django administrator. You want this to be called the Pokemon backend. You can do that later. Like these are all things that you can do in Django that we will see later as we work on that. But right now it's not of any importance, so I don't want to talk about that. But I just want you to know, like all these things like color scheme, all the layouts and stuff, everything here you can change, everything. Okay, this is just the default. Okay, do you have any questions so far on the admin? It's pretty cool, right? Like you do a few steps, it gives you all of this stuff ready for free.
Sorry, Sam, I don't know if you are already say it or not, but I want to ask about the comment when we want to add users. The comment is Python manage.py create super user, right?
Yeah.
And the create super user itu maksudnya dia mau masukin ke user gitu kan?
Yeah, it will create a record in the user, but this guy would automatically have the isStuff equals to true, and this guy would automatically have isStuff equals to true, and this guy would automatically have the isSuperUser equals to true. So if you go to the DB and you change this to 0, now I can't log in anymore using my admin. If I change this to 0, meaning now the isSuperUser become false, I can no longer log in because I'm no longer a super user. So that's what it's doing, is that when you say Python manage.py, create super user, what it does is that it creates a user with some default value. And among the default value, it will set my stuff to be true. So I have my stuff status to be true. I have my super user status to be true, where normal user will not have this to be true, which makes sense because you don't want people to sign up and then immediately the default is that they're a super user. That would be crazy, right? So yeah, that's what it's doing.
So if we input for the super user, it's automatically in the is stuff and is active already one.
True. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can create as many super users as you want. So if I go in there and say Python manage.py create super user, and this time I put in your name and I put in your email and stuff, it doesn't matter, but it would still create a new record and it would give it automatically by default is stuff will be true, is super user to be true. Later on I'll show you, like, there are other ways you can, in fact you can create another user right here as well. So in the back end I can say create user, add user, and I can create a username. I can say this one is for Dwi. And I'm going to give him a password. I'm going to say password as well. Password 2, password confirmation, password 2. And if I say save, required. Maybe it's too short.
For the password or the name?
No, let me try this one.
Okay.
Dwi user 1 2 3. Dwi user 1 2 3. Okay, save. It's too similar to the username. Oh man, I'm gonna give it a random name now. I try to put in but it says too similar. Okay, save. Okay, now it's created. See, when it's created, if I go and refresh my page now, refresh my database now, bam, I created Dwi user and I see that my password is created, but is super user is 0, is stuff is 0. You see that? So the difference is that when I say create super user, I create a user using the command line, but by default, they will be super users. You can go ahead and create as many users as you want. Now I already have 2 users. You see that? So you can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So try and play around with that. Like click on the SAML and then click on history. You can see what I did here. I said that, at 6:55, I changed my first name and last name. 6:58, I added him to the veterans group. I can click on groups and I can see I have 1 group. So this is a way to give like user different privileges. So maybe you have a user called veterans. Maybe you have a user called moderators. You have a moderators. Moderators, I will let them add, delete, change, delete. I will also give them I will give them permission to add user and change user, but I will not give them permission to delete user. So moderators, they have slightly less privileges than the veterans, but they can do a lot of things. They just cannot delete user. Okay. So I'm saying, okay, this is kind of the permission I want to give them. And I'm going to say save, done. So now I can assign Dwi to moderators. So let me go and do that. Click on user, click on Dwi user, and I'm going to say Dwi is going to now be a moderator. So she can do a lot of things that veterans can do, except she cannot delete user. While in veterans, I can give them privileges to delete user, for example. So this is kind of the simple backend that Django provides to you for free, just completely out of the box. And all the passwords are already automatically hashed. So they're all properly encrypted and decrypted later on. So you don't have to worry about writing your own SHA.
Okay, Sam. What if I just create the username that the group of super user is staff and active. What if I want to change? It's only a super user, not staff and active.
Yeah, you can click on this one, and then from here you can just remove the stuff,
Oh, okay.
remove the active.
Oh, okay. Okay, Sam, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, if you guys are wondering, like, is this actually how we build the whole Corgi? It is, okay. So I'm gonna maybe just show it to you on the back end, just to make sure that at least you know that I'm teaching you stuff that I put in practice, not something that is, you know, like in theory, but nobody do that in practice. This, right? I have the groups. Within the groups itself, you will see like I have a veterans group. Within the veteran groups itself, I will see that these are the permissions that I give to veterans. And then within the groups itself, within the authentication itself, I can look at users. And in my courses, course sets, I will see all my courses in here. So I can delete a course. For example, I want to delete the neural network course here. I can do that. These are all the quiz content. I can delete that. So the whole thing is here in managed in this area. So for example, you see that this is my action. I just deleted this course set because they asked me to. So these are kind of the entire thing. I'm gonna log out now. But I just want to show you that because give you some confidence that hey, like, oh, this is really cool, but can it really be used to I mean, Corgi has like what 5,000-6,000 of users already. So, you know, and it's always very fast, never had downtime, never had a problem, very scalable. So those things are kind of the benefit is that you can manage users, you can search for users, you can click into users and you want to search for something. Let's say Ajeng say, can you delete my account? I can just search for Ajeng, I can click on search, I can delete her account right away, 1 click, 2 clicks. So everything is there. We haven't actually even talked about the API yet, but I think we kind of get to quite far already with this. And also, by the way, if you realize what's happening is that you're actually making the post and get requests, and you see that in your terminal. You see that when you go into the URL, it gives you a post request. Post request is when you make a form. For example, you change something. Here, I'm changing what? I'm changing the user. User what? User number 2. So I'm saying that go to Dui's user account, change something, and I'm posting something. So 302 is created successfully. So 302, how do you know that? You go to HTTP 302. You see what it means? It says created successfully. So 302 basically says that it's found, it's created successfully. Okay, so this is redirection actually. So 200 is success, 404 is not successful, and then you see like all these actions in here. So anyway, that's kind of so the whole thing is now properly set up. Now I want you to do one more thing before we move on to the next topic. I want you to go into your Python again. I'm going to terminate the server right now. Let's look at our models.py. This is our models.py, right? So I want us to go ahead and actually create all this table as well. So right now they don't exist on a database because our database, we only did a migrate without doing a migration, without doing the make migration. We haven't actually incorporated all these classes into our database. So how do we do that? Now the first thing to do here is that you're realizing that you're trying to modify your database. So this is your current database. Your current database has maybe, let's say, 8 tables, not a lot, but you're trying to do a new thing by creating 4 new tables because we created 4 new classes in the models.py. And this is what we want to get to. This whole action, we give it a name. We call this make migrations. We're saying here we want to make a migration because we want our database to go from this state to this new state. And in this new state, we're going to have 4 new tables. So we want to make migration. Okay, so let's go ahead and reflect that by going to our shell. And I'm going to go ahead and say Python manage.py, and I want to say make migration. It says no changes detected. And that's because we haven't added that to the app. Okay. So let's go ahead and open up settings.py. Under installed apps, go ahead, put a new file in here. So this is under settings.py. So go to settings.py and then find under installed apps. Under installed apps, I want you to just add a new app that you created here. And this is the name of the app. So I name it Picket. If you name it Pokemon, you want to put Pokemon in here. So I'm going to say Picket, and then I can now do my make migration. And now it says, okay, I found the migration. You want me to create a model called class, you want me to create a model called student, and you want me to create a model called class enrollment. To make sure this is all okay, take a quick look at the initial PY. Look at this one. And you see what it's doing is that it's really creating a model. So it says create a model here, create this field, and then create another model, create this field. So basically when you say make migration, what it does is that make migration basically creates this file for you, and then you migrate based on this file, okay? So you don't actually have to do this stuff, but sometimes like sometimes you have some very convoluted operations. You can say, first of all, you need to create this model before creating this model. So you can actually change this field and play around with the value and change that and say, okay, this one comes before this. You can change that, and you can also still change things to like name become Nama student. You can still change things like that, all right? But for the most part, this is good enough. You can accept it. There are times where you don't accept it because it's not perfect. It's just doing its best to try and look at your model and you try to translate that to SQL code, but it's not perfect. It's not all the time perfect. So sometimes you need to change a couple of things here. I cannot really cover that, but I will show you examples if you ask me. In my own project, sometimes I will need to change the migration file here. In this case here, when you do make migration, I think because our model is simple enough, there shouldn't be any kind of complication. So it creates a new file called 0001 initial.py. I want you to just go ahead and say manage.py, and now after you make the migration, you say migrate, and you run that. And it says run everything, operations to perform, apply all the migrations, running, done. When it's done and you open up your database again and you refresh, bam, what do you see? You see the new models here. So all of this is done already. If you go back to your admin, and you refresh your page, you should be able to, we haven't registered it, so we need to register that later. But for now, at least we know that it already exists in our name and we can have this stuff. We just need to register that with the admin. Okay, so let me summarize this a bit. Okay, summarize that a bit. So first step number 1, go into settings. And usually try to use shortcut a lot. Don't try to write things like by hand. So that's step 1. Go and add picket add config. Add this one or add picket. Up to you. Both will work. Add the picket X or add picket. This will work. This will work. This is step number 1. Step number 2. Go ahead and actually run the following command. Make migrations. You don't really need picket. You can actually keep picket as well. Step number 3, okay, this one, what this will automatically create the migration files. Looks like something like 0001 or something initial.py. Or 002 initial.py, it looks like this, or it looks like, depending on how many migrations you run already. Later on, we'll have 003, but it will create this file. And when you do a migrate, it basically uses this file that it created for you. Okay, this is the file that it created for you using make migration. And then you go ahead and do step 3. And again, you run the following commands. And then what you say python migrate, and this will apply the migration file to the database. That's it. Step 1 to 3. Okay, so I'll give you a bit of time. This is something that you can just do. If you want to do it quick, you just have to do a command P. Use command P to search for settings.py. Okay, can you guys do that? And make sure that you have done this successfully. Check your database. No step 4. You're done. Check the database to make sure the new tables. Can I change the initial name? This one?
Yes, yes.
You can give it your own name, but you need to make sure that your migrate can still find that name. If not, you need to put migrate, and then you probably need to add a flag to find that name. But you can, it's up, like it's your own. Changing the name is no problem. Changing the content is where you need to be careful, because changing the content, like for example, in this case here, in order to create this class enrollment table, I need to make sure that class model already exists and student model already exists. Because if not, then what can it can't really reference that, right, Phil? So I need to first create class and student. But then to create student, I need to make sure that if there's any foreign key, that needs to be created. So there is some sort of logic there. So if you want to change this by hand, you need to be very sure what you're doing. Most times for beginners, I don't really teach that in my class, but I would say that if you're somewhat advanced, you should be very comfortable changing things by hand if you need to. In this case here, there's nothing that I need to worry about, because it seems pretty reasonable. You first create a class, very reasonable. Create a student, very reasonable. And then create class enrollment. So it goes from top to bottom. So sometimes you want to change things and say, oh, no, this is not the right order and stuff. You want to change things. But changing the content is where you want to be careful. But changing the file name itself is not a big deal. But typically don't change the 0001 though, because when you set up a new database, you want to run the whole migration, it needs to start from 0001, 0002. So it's kind of like Git, right? Where 0001 needs to be done first before 0002. It doesn't make sense to change this number, because you would then confuse, and it will then try to create this one first, and then, oh, this one doesn't exist, or that, and stuff like so. So I think typically I would stick to the default there.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Can you guys check that you have done up to step 4? If you have, can you let me know that you've seen the new tables already in table class or in your DB? Done? What about the rest? No changes detected, most likely because you have you done it in the install apps? Yeah, you need to refresh the table plus. But no, the no changes detected is either because you already you haven't put the installed apps on pick it under install apps. You need to add this line. Okay, after added, maybe you already migrated. Maybe you already migrated. Can you check your database to see whether you already done the migration? If not, maybe you can share a screen and I can point out why things are.
Okay, I will share screen.
Okay.
It's already served.
Okay, so can you refresh the database? Click on like Control L, go into database and click on Command R.
Command L?
Not Command L, but Command R, like R.
Oh, R.
R.
Okay. Like this?
Yeah, nothing. Okay, so now let's go back to your code. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code and let's see why things are. Okay, you have the config. Okay, that's good. Let's go back to your models. Models is not safe. Did you save your models.py? Because model, there is a dot there that says it's not safe. Can you go to can you type Control P and go to models.py? Yeah, model.py. Can you save this? I think it's not safe yet, because you can see the dot, the white dot is there. It's not safe yet. Okay, save.
Okay.
Now you try and make migration.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Who else has has questions you want to ask me?
Sam, can I share my screen? I still have having a problem.
Yeah, no problem.
So I already make migration and it shows no change detected. But when I refresh the table plus with Control R, it's showing something like this, and I can't commit to that.
Can you explain the problem again? Sorry.
I just following the steps. I will make migration and also the migrate. I already add the installed the picket apps picket config to the installed app list.
Yeah.
I already saved the model, so I just have one class here.
Yeah.
And then when I refresh the table plus, it's showing something like this. I don't know.
Discard. You should click on discard first. Click on discard.
Can. Oh, okay, and then it's shown.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Okay, so anyone else have questions? Anyone else? Into one version ahead, or can we iteratively migrate over all the migration files? The migration command will look at anything that is not applied yet, any other migration file that you did not create. So technically you can do make migrations, and then you can do another make migrations, and then you can do yet another make migrations, and then you can say migrate, and it will migrate, but it will create 3 different migration files, but it will run it through 2nd to 4th. The reason you do that is because it's version controlled properly. Because your make migration, like the real value here is that the fact that you have 001 initial.py, you have the fact that this is actually created for you before you run it, because this makes it version controllable. Because now, for example, Hussein can go and download my project here, and he can do make migration, and he would get exactly to the state of the database that I'm in right now, because his Django on his computer would be able to see, oh, that's the 001, and he will follow through exactly the same steps. So that is the kind of the beauty of that. Because if you don't do make migrations and migrate, how are you gonna get Hussein to set up exactly the same database that you have at this state? So your database is going to move through different states where you add more things to it, add more features to it. How are you going to make sure that that is always going to be version controllable, and that people can progress from one state of the database to another state, right? And so that is kind of the beauty of it. And if anything goes wrong, you can always go back to one version behind. You can say, oh, wait, something messed up in this new version. I can always go back behind.
Okay, Sam. So yeah,
okay.
Basically it runs into the the latest migration file.
Yeah, it goes from, let's say if I make migration, now I have 202, 03, 04, and if I say migrate, it's gonna go through, okay, right now it stopped at 01, so it's gonna go from 01, 02, 03, 04. It's gonna go through all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, you can make migration a couple of times, up to you, but when you migrate, it's when the real changes happen, because make migration only create the file for you. It doesn't do anything. It just create the file for you, and the file is called 000 something dot underscore initial underscore what dot py, and that's what it does for you. Make migration doesn't touch your database. The one that touch your database is the migrate command itself. Okay.
All right.
If you go into the admin right now, if you look at your admin page right now, you probably realize that, hey, but they don't appear on my admin yet, right? So to change this, how do you need to do is to wire it again. You need to wire the models into the admin. And the way you do that is to look into your admin.py. So admin.py, you would already have, have this file. When you run the create app, it would already create an admin.py for you. So I want you to just go into admin.py under your app. And I want you to import the model, import the three things that you created. So I created student, class, and class enrollment. So what I'm doing here is that I said from that model, from this model.py, import the three things in here and register the model. So I'm going to do that right now. Admin, site, register. This is a way to wire it up together. So I'm going to say wire it up, wire up to class, and finally do the same thing, except now I want to do it for class enrollment. So do the same thing, three things, save it, refresh the page. Bam. Now I have all the three. So I can go in there and add a student right now. I can give it a student. I can say this student is called Dwi at algorithm.ma, and I can say, I don't want to get her name wrong, so let me make sure that I copy Dwi. Oops. Okay, so let me copy that Dwi. G. Okay, and I say number of lessons. That's the default value. It's going to be 0. That's fine. Well, I can say save. Bam! It's created the first object. Now, if I go into my database and I click on my student, I saw my first student. So congratulations, you managed to create a fully functional app and stuff. Now all you need to do is to add the API layer.
Holy shit, it's good.
It's good, right? It's mind-blowing. It gives you all of this functionality. This is a whole fully functional app doing all of this work for you already without you doing. This is the first time you're learning Django, so it feels very scary, but honestly, this is a lot of value for free. Like the more you do this, like after you create a few apps, this is something that you can do, you know, it's very easy to make migration is kind of like the Git. It's kind of like the staging. It's like stage it, like Git add, and then migration is like Git commit, you know, in a way, like Git add and Git commit. But yeah. But okay, you guys have the admin.py ready? So this is what I did on my admin.py. Let me show you what I did. And you can maybe copy that. I'm gonna commit all of this together. I thought we could get to the API, but I know that a lot of us have to go off at 3 p.m. So I don't know if we can actually get to that point, but at least you learn, you set up all the right foundations already. The API is really simple after that, but I mean, you set up a lot of good foundations already. So, you know, second migration, let me put a proper comment here. Okay, this one. Git push origin main. Okay, done. I pushed it already. If you want to get exactly to this state of the file, all you need to do is do the same thing. Just go in there, git pull, and you can start from there. I don't want to rush too much already, but I would say that, you know, right now as you get to this stage, I can give you a few homework. So one is that I already created a lot of things for you. I haven't completed the class materials and the materials and stuff like that. So I want you to see if you can do this as your homework, okay? You don't have to do this individually. You can do this as a group, up to you. But as one homework, can you try and see if you can continue to implement what Iqbal has or your own app? It doesn't matter because nobody volunteered an app. I use Iqbal's app, but you can create your own app. Think of an idea, create your own app. I want you to go ahead and create your own app or use this app and continue to flesh it out because there are a few things. I already created the good, you know, like all the tables in here. I want you to continue doing that. See if you can get to a point where you have something like 80%, 90% done. Make your migration and then wire it to your admin. Wiring to admin is really easy. Wiring to admin is literally just import that and then just call admin site register. And it would just register that, just wire that to your admin. Okay. And make sure that when you have done all of that, you can see that all of these are being reflected in your database as well. So you should never touch your database by hand. Everything should be done using the one that you see, the admin portal. But your database should be reflecting what you want to do, what you want it to do. Okay, so if you have time, try and see if you can continue to work on it. So continue working on it. It's not very hard, right? Just continue to go into your models.py and continue to do your class, and then continue to do your stuff, add your code. But I want you to flesh it out. And then maybe when we do the second session again, I won't start from here. I would assume you already have good enough proficiency in here. I'll focus on API, I'll focus on cybersecurity, how to make sure your API is properly, very secured. It has proper throttling, API rate limiting and stuff, so you can actually launch a service and you can put it in the public domain and not worry that people is gonna abuse your service. You're not worried about that because you set up everything properly. And let me see if I think there are no more things to cover in there. But I would say, another thing that I thought would be maybe worth taking a look at. I have these slides that you should go and take a look at. Should go and read it up. Talk a little bit about like productionizing databases. I talk about how some of this stuff I covered just now. Maybe this one, for example. Like you learn how to create a product-based data science work, right? Like we do a lot of service-based data science work. So data science work, there is a service-based, provide a service, product-based, develop a product. Data scientists, generally, they learn a lot of visualization. They learn a lot of cleansing, filtering. Maybe they learn a little bit of like this and that, but typically there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes. So what are those things that go behind the scenes? And then how do you usually start, right? We talked about database earlier. We haven't talked about serializers. That's the API. We need to go into that one later. So there are a few other things I would say, like if you have time, go and take a look at that. But typically, the main line of thought is that a lot of things that happen in here, there are a few main big differences from how you do work when you're in a notebook setting where everything is just a global variable. Like when you use a Pandas notebook or Jupyter notebook, right? You usually start with like, you start with creating variables. You say df equals to this. But in a production setting, you're probably never gonna do that because you're creating all kind of global variable. You don't do that. You usually use a very OOP method, like a object-oriented format. So everything is a class. Everything is a class with proper methods, with proper attributes. So you need to know what is a class. You need to know what is class inheritance. Like this is trying to say that create a student, inherit from this. What is inheritance? What does it do? So I would say if you struggle in those kind of concepts, get good at that. Try to understand what is, like learn Python for Python. Not a lot of people think they're learning Python. A lot of people think they're good at Python, but what they're really good at is they're good at NumPy. They're good at Pandas. That's what they're good at. But they think they're a good Python programmer, but they're really a weak Python programmer. They're just a good Pandas programmer, right? So learning all that concept will help you understand things more clearly. And I don't know if you would have the time to go and rewatch the video from beginning, but you can redo the whole video from beginning. But this time, create your own app while following the process. So yeah, so those are the things that I would say, maybe worth picking up on. But I think I don't want to go any further than that because I think I already pack in like, it's too much. And if I keep going, you'll be overwhelmed. So I think I'll stop here. But kind of the next step here is to go in there and finish up your ERD, complete all of this, and then when we sit down together again, we're gonna continue from this project. But this time we're gonna build up the front end. We're gonna build up the API. We're gonna build up the user login, logout, all of these things. But all the main foundations are already here in this lesson. Does anyone want to ask me like questions or anything? Maybe not directly related to this project. Any question? I mean, any question related to anything that you're learning right now. Like you want to ask me any question. It doesn't have to be related to what we're doing, but any question in general. Any question? So I'm gonna add this guy to icon and say save. So if we look at class enrollment, we see that there is already the foreign key. If you in Table Plus, if you click on the foreign key, it would go directly to this. So very cool. So for example, I can click on student ID. It will go into this one. It will show me this is the student ID. So pretty cool. It would just all the foreign keys are there, but everything is done from this. Yeah. So I can now already have you already have a minimum viable product. Actually, you can already go out there and like start to fundraise. MVP. You can create as many users as you want. I can create another user just to go ahead and do that. Create student. I'm gonna add student, and this time I'm gonna add Hussein. And oh, that's email. I'm gonna say Hussein at algorithm.me, and I'm gonna say save. And then I'm gonna say go to class enrollment and put Hussein in the second class, class 2. Save, and then if I see that, it's really created. So yeah, I mean, go ahead and continue to work on it. But if you have questions, you can ask me now. If not, I think that's pretty much. But it's a very valuable skill set, because a lot of people know how to do the work in Notebook. Like, oh, I know how to run this in Jupyter or Google Colab, but they have no idea how to take that and actually productionize it and actually make it something that company can pay money for. Right? If you put something in Jupyter Notebook, nobody's going to pay you money for it. Nobody's going to say, oh, that's really cool. You know, you get it done in Google Colab here. Our company is going to use that Google Colab. No one is going to do that. They need a product. So here you're learning how to do that. Yeah, you can't really sit down in a meeting and like, yeah, I already done the work. I want you to pay me. It's like, where's the work? Well, here in Google Colab. I want you to pay me because I've done the work. No one is going to do that. So you need to learn. You need to combine your data science skill with some product development skills. Some, not a lot, not specialize in it, but you need to have a basic idea of it. And especially later, if you want to teach data engineering, but you don't even have any idea what software infrastructure looks like, you don't know what REST API looks like, you don't know what ORM looks like, you don't know what database looks like, you're gonna just teach from a textbook like a university professor who have never done business trying to teach you business, you know. So you don't want to be the kind of teachers. You want to be a teacher who know what you're doing because you've done it before, because you actually have real expertise in it, not because you're going through a textbook and just from top to bottom you're just reading it off. You actually have professors like that. I don't know if you've seen a lot of them, like docent who've never done anything in production before, but teaching you that stuff, and like you can tell this guy have never done it before, you know. So I think just going through the basics, build a good foundation, understand software architecture, understand cloud, understand deployment. Hopefully we can go all the way to deployment. I don't know how much time we have. Let's say we do this every product team learning day, and I don't know how far I can go, but yeah. So no questions? No one? Gak ada ya? Concurrency? That is actually not really a Django problem per se. That is more like how you set up your Nginx and stuff like that. If you want to set up, if you use a Postgre flow, if you use a Postgre SQL and you set up proper, like you have your Nginx on the front as a server, and then you have your, if you use Table Plus, obviously it's not going to be sufficient because not Table Plus, sorry, SQLite, because SQLite itself is a single threaded thingy. It's not even a real database, right? So you wanna the concurrency itself, Django is really, really performant. I think if you search it up, right, like Instagram uses Django, like you can search it up. You can search up like most of this stuff. They are built using the Django web framework, which is what I'm about to teach you. So these are entirely very, very huge sites. So I'm not trying to teach you something that cannot scale in production or anything like that. You can read up on all this stuff. You can like type into like what other sites use Django Rest Framework. A lot of them. It's written entirely in the Django Rest API. No questions?
I have some.
Yeah, sure.
Untuk bikin, kan waktu itu pernah bilang kalau untuk bikin si API ini kan entah pakai C+ atau pakai Django. Terus disaranin waktu itu untuk awal-awal belajar pakai Flash aja. Makanya waktu itu aku, Hussein sama Ajeng belajarnya lewat Flash API duluan. Nah, sekarang kan belajar pakai Django. Betternya yang dilanjutin kita Django aja, apa lebih ke Flash-nya apa gimana best practice-nya?
I would say if you like what I told my team is that I said I think I told you as well, right? I said in terms of Flash, get yourself up to about 6 out of 10. That's all you need.
Oh,
get to about 5 or 6 out of 10. That's all you need, and then the rest of the time focus on Django. Focus on Django Rest Framework if you want to build production app.
Okay.
Like this one, you want to get to like 9 out of 10 if you can, or 8 out of 10. But Flash, just get a basic understanding. Like oh, this is what Flash does. Oh, that's the Route.API PY. Okay, wait. Yeah, just get to a basic understanding of what Flash does and what Flash provides. But once you get to 5, 6 out of 10, move on already. Don't try to like specialize in it already. Just move on. Yeah.
Oke, ya karena memang Flash lebih kelihatan sih ininya ya apa basicnya. Kalau Django kan langsung jadi framework gitu. Sip. Oke.
Yeah. Yeah, and later on, I mean, if you want some extra challenge, you go and tell me how to change this stuff. This is actually very easy as well. All of this stuff can be changed and stuff. But if you want some extra challenge, but let's do it one step at a time. Right now, just focus on what you learn here. And I don't know if you want to rewatch the whole video, go ahead and yeah, if you guys prepare the video, give me a link so I can send it to my team as well. They can learn as well. But I mean, a lot of them already did this. But anyway, you know, I mean, I had a really awesome time trying to do this with you guys and stuff. Maybe the next project we do, maybe somebody apart from Iqbal, somebody have to come up with an app idea and we can build your app together in real time. Like you come up with an app idea. That's what I told Nayoko and Mulia to do as well. I told them to come up with an app idea and I can build it for you in real time, you know, but I need you to come up with an idea. So you come up with an idea, you don't need to know how to implement it, but you do your best. I will show you the rest and I'll build your app for you in real time. With everyone else. So, you know, maybe the next one, somebody can volunteer an idea like, oh, Sam, how do I build this thing and look like that? And the machine learning should do this and should do that. And I can build it for you and we can take that as a product team learning day. I don't know, depending on how much time we have left after we learn this. But, you know, it's been a really fun time. I enjoy this a lot. I hope you guys learned something new. I know some of you are more advanced, so you didn't probably learn as much, but some of you probably like learn more. So, yeah, have a great rest of the Friday. Have a great weekend, and that's it. See you guys.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks a lot,
Yeah,
Sam.
you're welcome.